Parshas Tzav, Mimer 1. ואכלתם, אכול, ושבוע, והללתם, משמח, אלהיכם, עמכם, להפליא, ולעולם. And you will eat, truly eat, and be satisfied, and you will praise the name of Hashem, your God, who has dealt wondrously with you, and my people will never be ashamed. On this, the Alkut says that when he blesses the righteous, he doubles their blessing. V'yachaltem, and again, yebusho. The meaning of the intention of eating is this: there are souls and angels within the chain of worlds, Bria, Tzir, and Asiya, as it says, if there are angels of Bria, angels of Yitzir, and angels of Asiya. Above, the fruit of the angels is the spiritual strength and power that is drawn to them, enabling them to grasp his godliness and serve him with all their heart. As the Medrash says in the Pasuk, Shmi B'kirbei, the ministering angels are sustained only from the radiance of the Shekhinah, as it says, Kulam, through the chain of levels by means of myriad upon myriad of intermediaries, which are the angels in all the worlds through whom the flow passes, and which are called like the inner organs to which food and nourishment passes. From this there comes into being physical food below. As our sages said, there is not a blade of grass below that does not have a mazel above striking it and telling it to grow. That mazel is a spiritual force, and gavoya mi'al gavoya shemer, one higher than another, until it reaches the root of all roots, in the highest angels of Bria, who receive strength and power from the word of Hashem to grasp godliness. From them, through descent and ishtarshlus, physical food comes into being from the level of Pnei Sherid and Merkava, which are angels. From the side of Gvura, the souls of animals are drawn down. From Pnei Nesher, birds are drawn down, and so on. When spiritual nourishment and flow are revealed above to the angels, then through the chain of descent of levels, there is revealed below as well blessing in the year and all kinds of produce. And the whole purpose of this descent is that when man eats, and his root is also from there, for there are souls of Bria, and they are more inward than the angels, then when he eats them, they add strength and intellect to him, since they are from the level of Elam Lacham Lefnei Melach Melach. Except that they descended. By eating them, he raises them to their source in their inward level, which is the Pnei Adam Larabatam. That is why specifically man can raise them, because he is from the middle line, which runs through one extreme to the other. It is explained elsewhere that just as the angels of now are considered like beasts relative to souls, because in their root they come from the beasts and living beings that are Merkava, which are receivers from the supernal man, so too even the souls of now relative to the souls that will be revealed in the future are also called beasts, as it's stated in the Hemna, that there are souls that are in the category of beasts. Therefore they too will need to be elevated by those souls, and they will be by their becoming embodied and descending, and that will be by their becoming embodied and descending in the form of physical foods, the Leviathan and the Sherabar. Then the righteous will eat them and raise the foods to their root, just as the souls of now raise physical food whose root is from the angels. It is very likely that only a spark and a radiance of these souls descend and is clothed in the physical Leviathan and Sherabar, and by eating that spark and radiance, the root itself is also elevated. Something similar happens with Karbonis, where through the offering of the animal soul, all the angels and holy chayas from whom that soul was taken are elevated and lifted. For this, the reason for this is that now the light is revealed only in the mode of Malik Laman, whose root is from the Kav and Chot after the Tzimtzum, and from this level came all the souls of now. But in the future there will be a revelation of the Seviv Kalaman, which is the level of the circle before the Kav, and from that level come the souls that will be revealed in the future. Those souls are far higher in comparison. This is the meaning of Ve'achaltem Achil, something that has already been eaten. You will now return and eat it again. In other words, the souls of now, which already were once in the category of Adam, will again be eaten, meaning elevated to a much higher level. And this is V'hilaltem Hashem Hashem, for in the future, after all the biurim and elevations, when all lower things will be elevated by the souls of now, and the souls of now in turn by the souls that will be revealed in the future, then there will be a state of Eir Chezei Sheschayalat that is Baila, with Malchus becoming Keser, not safe and Betchelos, and all influence will then be through Malchus, as it says, then it will be in the category of Pellet. That is the meaning of a Shrimasa, that the end of action will become first in the category of Pellet, Keser of Malchus. With this we can understand why it says Ami. We say Mehedi Yashama Kil Kala. Kil means the drawing down and influence. Now it says Hakil Kol Yaakov. The influence is drawn from the male to the female. But the Kala herself does not yet have a Kail, because Malchus is only a receiver. Therefore the groom says, Hare at Mekudeshes, and the bride is silent, because she has no voice of her own. But in the future, when Malchus will be elevated after all the Birudim, become Eishes Chala to his Baila, becoming a source of Orchezda, then she too will become a Mashpia, and then it will be killed Kala. Therefore, because now it is like the mission at the end of Psachim, the Akala, Vakhala is corresponding to what is stated in the Yerushalmi. The one who eats from another is embarrassed and lowers his eyes. Since now the Kala, which is Malchus, is only a receiver, she turns away her face and eats. That is the whole Indian of shame. But in the future, because after this bitter and elevation, she will become a Teres Baila, and she will be in the category of Mashpia. Automatically, then there will be no shame. This is the meaning of the doubling of the blessing. Not only will they be elevated so greatly that there will be ve'achaltem, as explained, but in addition, there will also be Yebusho, because she will become a Teres Baila and a Mashpia. This is also why our sages said that in the future the righteous will be called before with Kaddish. Elsewhere it is explained in the phrase V'lo Yizbeishashu. And Tana Develio, it says, what is Lahafli? To make a distinction between the deeds that are righteous and the deeds that are wicked in Gehenim. Lahafli can also mean to separate. Like Ki Lefali Nedra, Ki Yafi Blinder, where the Gemara says that Naziris requires explicitness. Although explicitness sounds like explanation, it also carries the sense of separation and distinction, like nafshirus. The intent of Tanat Velio is that even though the relation will come from the supernal Pella, where before him darkness is like light, and if you are righteous, still from there too there will be drawn a separation between the deeds that are righteous and those that are wicked. This is like what the Medrash says in the these are the deeds that are righteous. At first it says, I do not know what she desires, because for him everything is as nothing, and darkness is like light. But even so, he contracts himself to desire specifically the deeds that are righteous. This is the wonder of separating and distinguishing. It is also explained that Yebusho means that your reward should be your own, so that there should not be namo the chisufa, bread of shame. Base. From all this, the Torah Parshas Tzav can also be understood on the Pasuk Zekarben Adam b'yamim mashachase. On this, it brings the Pasuk for Yemilahem me'ha'ochel yatsa machol, and says that Shimshon was amazed in his heart. A lion eats all other creatures, and now food came out of it. So to Aaron eats all the karbanis, and now carbon comes out from him. And what is that? Zekarben Adam. On the simple level, this is not at all. What is the amazement? The Indian is known from what was explained regarding Vim ha'ochel yeichel. As the verse is speaking of two kinds of eating. One is human eating, meaning the eating of kainim. And one is the eating of the mizbeach. This eating is the eating of the bitter of Shemban, which refines ban. The bitter of Shema, which refines ban. The eating of the mizbeach is the eating of the lion eating. And see and desire and gracious about this. But that is the externality of the world. In Biaor, whereas the level of Adam, which includes everything, only eats through the eating of the lower man. Atem Kriyam Adam Nasa Adam B'Tamir. This is the meaning of Kainam Mixlam B'Bailam Skap, and it comes out that Adam is the one who refines and elevates the sparks of Shimban. Likewise, the lion that eats the karbanis is the one refining them, because the soul of the animal comes from the dregs of the Efanim, which were not yet refined, and so its refinement is to Pnei of the Merkava, which is even above the Efanim themselves. This is explained elsewhere as well. Now it is explained in another place that whatever is in the category of a refiner must itself already be completely refined, because it cannot refine and elevate something else if it has not yet itself been refined. This is like what Chazal say at the end of If you did not yet conquer the territory close to your own palace, and you are going to conquer outside lands, and as it is explained elsewhere, this is why it is forbidden to eat before davening, because eating is an Indian of refining the sparks in the food and elevating the food. Therefore the altar began and ended with the table, as explained elsewhere. But how can a person elevate the food when he himself is still down below? Only through davening, which is the drawing of godliness into the soul through the 18 blessings of Baruch Atah Hashem. Only then can he afterward eat and elevate the food as well. So if Pnei Ari eats karbanis, it must certainly already be itself fully refined. Likewise, Aaron, who eats all the karbanis, and his eating causes and draws down the eating of the supernal Adam of the throne, which is even above the Pnei Ari, the Merkava. Elsewhere, it is explained that Aaron is the level of Nir. This is like Aryeh, which is the letters of Re'eh, except that Aaron is a higher level, as explained above. And further, Aaron is explained as Aleph Har Nun. And from all this, it is clear that Aaron is a Merkava to the very exalted levels that are already completely refined. Therefore, the said of him, V'nachnu Ma, which is also the level of Ma, like Moshe, as it says, V'Aaron Mahu. If so, the amazement is great. how can there now come from him a carbon, meaning that he becomes something needing refinement? For the whole bringing of a carbon shows that the one bringing it needs refinement and elevation, and through the carbon he becomes refined and elevated. So if Aaron is the one who eats all the carbonas and elevates all of them, how can it be that he himself still needs refinement and elevation? That is the intent of the Medrash, that at first glance it is a great wonder. But the Indian is exactly like what we have explained above on ואכלתם אכול, what is now a level of very lofty souls already rectified and refined to the point that they can refine and elevate sparks, is nevertheless considered like beasts relative to the souls that will be revealed in the future from the level of וכלה, and they will then need elevation. This is exactly the meaning of what had previously been in this category of the eater, the refiner, the rectifier of others will now come out mimenu as food, descending into the category of physical food, and through that they will be elevated even higher. This is also the ending of Shimshon's riddle. Chazal say in the beginning of Seder that Shimshon is called by the name of the Holy One, blessed be He, as it says, the name of Vaya is the level of the sun, above the level of the name Lakim, which is a shield covering that conceals the revelation of Shem Vaya. The angels of Yah received through that shield and covering. Therefore, even the level of Ari, the Korban, which is the eater and elevator, becomes food relative to Shem Vaya, which is the level of sun. For the ultimate longing of the souls, the Shtabak of the Malka, as explained elsewhere on Ani Yashen, believe Biyaor. This is the meaning of Achal Tiyari and Dvashi. This is the meaning of Ki Mikvias Ha'ariye Rada Hadvash. And similarly, this is the meaning of even though Aaron's level of mamin is already completely refined to the point that he is fit to refine and elevate all karban, still he becomes something to be refined. The reason is that the drawing down of Shem Mishchas Kodesh is from a very lofty place, because it anoints the holy, and Kodesh is Chachma D'Atzilas, so the oil is above Chachma D'Atzilas. This is explained in the Zer and elsewhere on the Mamarim of Balischa, and as therefore, in order for the revelation from Shem Mishchas Kodesh to be drawn into Aaron, he had to bring a carbon to become in the category of something being refined, because there are so many levels within the Indian of Bittul. Bittul is from Chachma Kayachma, and there is Chachma Tata and Chachma Ilah, and endless level beyond. Aaron Aleph had Nun, relative to himself, was already highly refined, but relative to Shem Mishchas Kodesh, which is Chachma Ilah, and above Chachma, he becomes something that needs refinement, needs to be refined, and through that, the revelation of Shem Mishchas Kodesh is drawn into him. This is why it says, at first glance, it should have said, since afterwards it says, meaning that from the day he was anointed, he brings the carbon every day forever. So why does it say, rather, it means that through this, even every single day forever, there should be a revelation of the level and rank of a yem. Yem is a term of elimination and revelation, as in v'yikra la'or yem, and as is known the in of hayem yem echad leimer hayem sheni shneyam, as explained elsewhere. This is the in of chadish yamenu, as explained in the similar to Torah speaks of yemei olam yemei kedem. This is the meaning of yem himashchayse. Likewise, as regarding the karbanos of the Nesiim, at the dedication of the Mizbeach. That in actuality, the carbon of Nachshon was brought in the actual day of anointing. So how can it be said about all the karbanos of the Nesiim? Rather, it means at the level and rank of the carbon they brought with the silver bowls and basins and incense drew down also on every later day from the level of the Yem Himashachayse. Just as the carbon of Nachshon was actually on the day of anointing, so each Nasi on his own day drew down from the level of that day of anointing. The same applies to the carbon of Adam, meaning forever. Nevertheless, it is from the level of the Yem Himashachayse drawing down to have this revelation and drawing down, he had to become in the category of something refined relative to the bittul of Chachma Ilah itself, which is above the level of Aaron. And this is why the Medrash continues to is the carbon Aaron is a carbon, not because the Goban is before and after this. It says but only regarding Aaron's carbon does it say Zeus is the level of the Nekeva Shembam, which is being refined, but Zeh is the level of the male, the level of Aaron, whose root is from Shema, as explained above. Yet, even so, in order for there to be a level of which is such an exalted drawing down from a very lofty place, even this level of Zeh to bring forth a carbon and become refined, and even this is an even higher kind of carbon. This is like what is explained elsewhere on Batmayim Zeh. Nimoil and Bayim Hazeh Bo and the Zair and the Kalas Hazava Amar and Kol the Dihinis of Bamadalig. And it says as a Havaya, and I am Ashkosov on this with the Ramaz, Parshas Tzav, Dafko from Hey, and I am Benachas, Dafnun Gimel, Yoveze Chulu. Maimer Beis, Bir Ma'at La Pasuk, Va'achaltem Ochel Chulu. A brief explanation on the Pasuk, Va'achaltem Ochel. To understand how Nunayama, which are the souls drawn from the union of Atzilas, can still be considered like behemoths compared to the new souls of the future. Then it is explained elsewhere The Indian is as explained elsewhere on Ve'ela Mishpatim on the phrase Bezerati is Beis Yisrael Zer Adam Bezer Behema. Behema is the numerical value of Ban, which refers to the souls of Bria. Adam is Ma, which refers to the souls of Atzilus. Because Atzilus is the level of Adam and Damal Elgin. It is only a revelation from concealment into disclosure. Atzilus is related to Vayat, drawing forth. But Bria is already a true novelty of Yesh Miyayin. Elsewhere, this is also explained in the distinction involving Kav V'chut, that it is the beginning of the revelation of Chachma. Now, within Atzilus itself, there are also 4 levels of Abiyah, as explained later in the explanation of Mi Mana Reva Yisrael. These are the levels of Nefesh, Ruach, and Shama of Atzilus, which are the Biyah of Atzilus. Namely Bina, Zah, and Malchus. But Chaya and Yechida are called Atzilus Shabbatilus. See, at Chayim in the words of the Ramaz at the opening of Kairach, as it says in Sefer HaGagulim, that Adam Rishon before the sin had a neshama and a neshama from Atzilus. That means Atzilus Shabbatilus. This is the meaning of Adam Be'erach Atzilus. The La'ela is mentioned there. If one merits more, he is given the name Havaya in fullness, and that is Adam Be'erach Atzilus the La'ela. And about him it says Ve'edu B'dgas Hayam, and so on. So too, it's also regarding Moshe, Ma Diyodcha, the prayer of Shabbos, about which it says Ve'edu B'dgas Hayam of Shemayim. Ma is the level of Adam in the path of supernal Atzilus, as it says Milgav Iu Shema Diu Erech Atzilus. The 3 lower levels mentioned earlier are Biyah of Atzilus, because daughter and son are Nefesh and Ruach of Atzilus from Zon of Atzilus, while Nishmasa Mesita da Ava means the neshama of Atzilus, drawn from the union of Ava. That is the Indian of Nuniyama. This also fits the explanation brought in Neshel Avram and is applied in the writings of Chaim through the Ramaz and Mikdash Melech. Though the Ramaz and Mikdash Melech explain it differently. This is also the meaning of what was written elsewhere on Hein Ha'adam Haya Kachad. Now the Adam Rishon was infinitely higher even than Ashbi, because even the very high souls that came from the union of Avav Atzilus, which is the Neshama, the Atzilus, are still only like Bria relative to Atzilus itself when compared to the soul of Adam Rishon. This is also what the Medrash means when it says Hein Ha'adam Haya Kachad. It meant like the unique one of this world, of the world. As the Shema Yisrael Shem Echad. According to this, what the Zohar says that the Dubigas Yam can be understood to refer to the Naran of Atzilus, because the Gas Hayam means Nuniyam, which are Neshama. The Atzilus Mamish Eif is Ruach Atzilus. Still, since these are the Biyah of Atzilus, therefore, about Adam Rishon, who was from Atzilus, it says that the Dubigas Gas Hayam, meaning that he draws and lowers life into the Biyah of Atzilus and into actual Biyah. He alone is called Adam Mamish Adam Elim because he is from Atzilus. This is also the meaning regarding Moshe, Ma Diyodcha, because Moshe married a Chaya, which is above Neshama Atzilus, and he too is from Atzilus Shabbatilus. According to the Ramaz, he merited Chaya from Pnimius Arach, which is bestowed upon Abba. That is the Indian of Moshe's Ma, as explained elsewhere. Shema Diu Erech Atzilus is from Mechinas Kes. Therefore, it says about him, Hayom. Or another way to explain it is that this refers to the angels of Atzilus, which are also called Nuniyama. That helps explain the Zohar's phrase, the even sounds difficult, because the Ge'ayam already means fish of the sea. Rather, it means even the supernal Nuniyama, the angel. Still, the connection of Moshe's Ma to the prayer of Shabbos is because Ma is the level of Bitl, which is the Indian of Tfilah Shabbos, which is Atzilus. Elsewhere, this is explained on a Shebsaisa, the Tishmeru, that Shabbos Ilah is the level of Kivoy Shabbos, Mikol Malachta Ashidabara, higher even than Bria Shabbatilus. Now it is explained on Yonasi and on Velechi Lach that the source and root of Jewish souls is from Machshav Aktuma, from Chachma and Kasset Elyon, only that there it is in the Makkah form, and it's called Mazlayu. Through prayer, there is a level of Kildadi to rise back to the your source, and the main ascent is on Shabbos. That is the end of the extra soul. Therefore, the Yadcha is the prayer of Shabbos, about which it says that it's Gu. Through that, they are called Kadesh Yisrael, Reish Tvasa, the very source and beginning of Torah, as explained there. With this, one can also understand the Zohar in Parshas Bayah about Bayal Pari, where there is a mention of the great serpent that Moshe feared to approach him. The reason is that the Lamazal came just as there is Leviathan and Niyama in holiness. So there is an opposite on the side of impurity. About that, it says Leviathan Nachash Berech. And there are also impure nuniyama, as written in the Zayr and Pardis Baz. That means the exact opposite. The whole Levias nuniyama are in total bittul in their source name to Baruch, as explained elsewhere on Ozos and Moshe bittul Levias. Of Klippa is the opposite. Hatanim agod la shir amar liya oidi, a separate selfhood. Now regarding Moshe, it says Minamayim Mishasiu, because Moshe is from the house of Levi, from the level of holy Levias, as explained in the Zayr and elsewhere. But he rose higher at the level of Adam, about whom it says that Guvigas Hayam. Still, Moshe was more humble than all men, and he held himself only as being on his own true level of Minamayim Shisiu. Therefore, he was afraid to come to Pari, who is called Atanim Hagod, because once there is Zelu Mazeh, this becomes war. But Hashem said to him, Baal Pari, because concerning Moshe, it says that it's Guvigas Hayam, and so on. With this, one can also understand the future meal of Leviathan and Sharabar, even according to the Ramaz, that the Guvigas Hayam refers to the Biya or to the angels of Atzilus, still relative to the new souls that will be revealed in the future from Sev Kalaman. One can say that the Guvigas Hayam refers to the lofty souls of Atzilus called Nunayam, which will need to be elevated by the souls that will be revealed in the future. That is the inyan of the meal of the Leviathan. Although it says in Shari Kedusha that the souls of now also have the root Adam Kadman in relation to Yechidah, still it is explained at time that Adam Kadman is called Adam Debriya. Akudim is called Adam Dietira, and the whole of Atzilus is called Adam Dasia, about which it says but Atzilus itself was only a ray of Ein Sof. Elsewhere, this is explained on Lamasei. Therefore, in the future, when there will be revelation of the Sebek Lam and the higher Atzilus, then even the very lofty and mighty souls of now, the Nuniyama, whose root is in the upper Bria, as it says at the end of the Knesset, that Adam the Bria, the Iyu Yam, and Adam the Tirishar will be elevated by the new souls that will be revealed in the future, speedily in our days. This can be further understood from what was explained in the Parsha V'yetim, Vaya, the source of the souls is from Shem Vaya, as explained elsewhere. Only afterward are they drawn down through Shem Lekim to descend to become clothed in a body. But in the future, what Yaakov said will be fulfilled. Shem Vaya itself will become only like Shem Lekim relative to the revelation, the very essence of Ein Sof, that will then be revealed, just as now Shem Lekim is the shield and vessel with which Shem Vaya is drawn, as in Ki Havaya Hu Lekim. So in the future there will be a revelation from Atmos Ein Sof through Shem Vaya, and Shem Vaya will itself be like a Lekim relative to that revelation. This is the end of the new souls, which will then be drawn from Sefer Kalam, only that they will come through the future Lekim, which is Shem Vaya itself. Elsewhere, this is also explained on the fact that the phrase Ki Im Yisrael Yim Shemecha appears twice in Parsha V'Yishlach, once to the angel and once to Hashem himself. One can say that this corresponds to the two categories of souls, those of now and those of the future. Mimer 3. As was explained earlier at the end of Parsha V'Yigash, Chasn and Kalor, for Yaakov and Rachel, as explained in Piyat Chaim and Sharamida. Then there's that Knesset Yisrael is called Rachel, and that is Malchus, that Tilus as it becomes clothed in Biyah, like Rachel of Negas is there in the Alma. These are the created beings who are in the category of Yesh, the opposite of Ein Sof, and therefore Malchus is forced to descend and give influence to them. This is why she is called Kala, because her desire is to rise upward and be absorbed into Ein Sof, but against her will she descends. And Lefnega is in the Alma, silent and still. This was explained earlier in the Maimer, and is Karbani, Lachmi, and Elamasi. Yaakov is called Chasm because he is Chayz Darga, the level that stretches from one end to the other, drawing down Ein Sof from the very highest of all levels into Rachel, who is the Kala and receiver of this flow and influence. And this becomes the union, being the drawing of Seviv into Mamalik. This drawing is called by the name Yaakov because Yaakov has the letters of Yibaka, as is written in Chaim, and as the verse Yibaka to the Bebinbar, and also as Yibaka Kashachar Eirech. The meaning is that like dawn breaking through the darkness of night in order to shine, as in Shachar Allah, so to the level of Yaakov breaks through the level of Yashish Chayshich Sistrei within Erin Seif, which is not even in the category of Seif or Mala, because even Seif is already called Erin Makav, whereas what is above, even that is called Yashish Chayshich Sistrei, as explained earlier in Shchayran even over. And this is the meaning of the Pasuk as Yibaka Shachar Erech. See what was explained in the Medrash end of Bahar, that Aruchoscha is the level of Arachanpim being drawn into Malchus, and that is called Aruchoscha in the second person because it becomes the level of Arach within Knesset Yisrael. That is why it's called Arach, because it ascends downward, B'li Gvul V'Seif. This was explained earlier in Vaz Yiglin on the Pasuk, on the phrase Erech HaPayim. And Tatzmiach means like growth, which is a kind of yesh mi'ayin. Just as from above to below there is yesh mi'ayin, so too the growth from below to above through the power of the growth force in the earth, which causes the seed to sprout, is like yesh mi'ayin. The plant of the seed is no comparison at all to the fruit that grows from it. So too it says, Zereat Stakas Mesmech Zereat Stakas, the level of Yaakov, who breaks through and shines the radiance of and soft from above to below into tzedakos, which is malchus as explained in the Zohar. And through that there grows from below to above the level of Yeshua, meaning the level of erachoscha that is drawn from down below the level of arachampen until from below there sprouts bittel and skalos. This is like the idea of yavosho achas b'tshuva, and it's explained elsewhere in the Maimer on Mayafu Pamayich, and in the meaning of yesh kena elam b'shu achas. And this is the meaning of v'halach l'fanecha tzikach l'fanecha means inwardness, and v'halach means drawing and extending, that the inner point of the heart should be drawn towards Hashem, as explained in the Geras HaKodesh. All this comes to the level of Zidit Stakas, but what causes the level of Yaakov in this breakthrough is Simcha, revelation of the inner light of Yara Shempanov. The meaning is that it is like the well-known example of Tzavu Panasha Be'abo, that it's shown because he found the new Tisefta, since it was filled with light from a new insight. Through this strength, that the light in his mind and understanding his face lit up and revealed itself outwardly. This was explained earlier in the Maimer of on his Fart Melchem. So to above, this can be understood. It says Yaakov but that is after the breakthrough. What first awakens the breakthrough is the level of the king's light in himself. This is similar to what was explained earlier in the Susasi in the phrase that the level of is drawn from a chupasa, and also in on a shekel. So this is the meaning of samach. Tismach reim mahuvim, samach tismach reim mahuvim. Kesamech yitzchak megereden mekedem. The reim mahuvim are the chasna and kala just mentioned. Samach means as above, that what causes the breakthrough, and drawing down is the light and playfulness, and the revelation of the light is joy, as explained elsewhere in Osus. The request is that Hashem should gladden them. Meaning that without any prior Isus Lasata, just as in the beginning of creation, it was purely because and Isus La'ila without being preceded by Isus Lasata, because in Atzvos Lefnei HaMakim, specifically Lefnei HaMakim, but not within time and place. Above, however, Hine Makamiti, there is Ched. This is also the meaning of Kechasin Yetze Yichain Pa'ir because Kainem is Isus La'ila without Isus Lasata, because if it would depended on the lower awakening, it would not be called a blessing at all. This is why it says Yisa means to lift upward to a place where Shuz Lasata does not reach, as explained earlier in Kaisa and Ishcher even other. In the same way, the chasna is in the category of yichayin, meaning that the breakthrough should come without the prior work from below. This drawing and breakthrough the level of Yaakov in the time it goes is called וכלה. The Yud means the Vav means the drawing down from Chasn to the Kala, but in the second blessing, which refers to the future, then Ishchal says Baila and Hakama equal in stature, both using one crown. Then it will be Mesmech Chasn in Makala, one single joy, because of the revelation of Sev Kalaman below is like a circle which above and below are equal. Then the joy of the Chasn, then the joy of the Chasn, the joy of the Kala will be exactly equal, because there will no longer be any higher and lower at all. So what is explained in Maimer to Bnei Yehuda, Bnei Yisrael Yaakov, also Vigash. In short, Kitzer, Rachel is called Kala and Yaakov is called Chasn because of Yibaka and Chascha, and from this there also grows from below to above the level of Yeshua's, meaning bittel and skalos. But first awakened to breakthrough is Elhichem, that is without prior Lasata. Right now there is a Mesmech Chasn, afterwards the Kala, but in the future will be Mesmech Chasn in Kala with one single joy. Maimer 4 V'haya Lavanak Erachama V'erachama Yeye Shebasayim Kershibas Hayamim V'Gomer. And the light of the moon will be like the light of the sun, and the light of the sun will be sevenfold like the light of the 7 days. Now, like the light of 7 days, the Medrash explains this refers to the light that Hashem originally created at the beginning and then hid away in Eden. The 7 days of creation will correspond to the 7 lower attributes of Atik, as explained by the Arizal. The light of the 7 days means the and Chayos of these 7 midas, and more deeply it refers to the higher level, the Gimel Deshenis of Atik, because Chachma is called light, as explained elsewhere. This is already above the actual 7 days themselves. About this it says, one who exalted above the days of old. The days of old, are the 7 days of creation, designed Tachtenim of Atik. And a Masnaz refers to what is above them, the higher level. Now the idea is as follows. We say but now in our current state there is no voice, so there is no kala. As it says, like a sheep was silent, she has no revealed speech, meaning there is no gili of divine speech, because all the worlds of Bia have no comparison to him. He is kolish, moved completely beyond them, so the divine speech does not reveal itself in them as it does in Atzilos, where it is openly one with Ein Sof. Even though angels proclaim Kaddish and say Baruch Kodesh Chem, meaning there is some revelation of Hashem's glory in Bia, still this is only through a tremendous descent. Yeshiv Hashem Kaviyachal sits meaning he lowers himself to be revealed below, and this only comes through the praises of the Jewish people specifically, as explained elsewhere. Even though the angels carry the throne, that is only the throne, but not the revelation of Adam, the higher divine level that is upon the throne. That comes only through the avodah of Neshamas Yisrael, through which draws down a much deeper level. This is the idea of Yaakov, he breaks through all the rocks, the concealments, and gevuras in the desert, the place of concealment, and draws down the thin line of Ensof into those hidden places. In Yaakov it says, the sun shone for him, meaning the light of Ensof became revealed through him. The sun is compared to a groom, as it says, the sun is like a groom, and the concept of chasen is also Yaakov, because Yaakov is all about breaking through Yibaka, many levels of breakthrough, many Yitzias, going from one level to another, constantly revealing higher light. That's why we say, Kail Matalas Chasanim, in plural, 2 levels of chasen, because at every stage from one world to another there is a barrier, a parsa, and Yaakov breaks through each one. The Kala, the one who receives the light, Kol Sanavshi, the soul that longs and receives right now, is in a state of silence. During exile she has no voice, no expression, because the physical world hides and conceals the light of Ensof. But in the future, when it says when the infinite light, especially the level of Sevi Kalama, will be revealed openly, there will be Kail Kala, the voice of the bride. Voice means revealed expression. Not only that, but also Kail Chasam will be revealed, because right now even the groom's voice is not fully revealed. It does not come down to open expression in speech. Everything is hidden. But Lasad Lavai, both will be revealed. Kal Matalas Chasan, and both levels of the groom openly with joy. And this is the meaning of Eis Lachshas, Eis Labar. Now is the time of silence because of concealment, the Chash of Chashmal. But in the future, when all concealment is refined and removed, it will be a time of speech, open revelation. Maimer Hey, Inyan Shivas Miluyim. The idea of the 7 days of Miluyim needs explanation. At first glance, it's not understood. How can the level of Hakama, the light of the sun, be referring to what is called the Nar Ha'elyon of Atzilus, which is lower than the level of Chasen, as explained earlier? After all, the pasuk clearly says, the Shemesh Samael Behem V'hu Chasen, the sun itself is called a groom. The explanation is that Shemesh refers to Zah itself, and as the Ramaz explains, it is the light of Zah that is rooted in Abba, since light is associated with Chachma. This is the level of Chasna and corresponds to Oz Yibaka Kashachar Eidach. However, it is known that Zah of Atzilus descends and nests within Yitzira, and then it is called Nar, as in the concept of the Kruvim, where Zun are called Anpizutri. So it comes out well that the Levana and Hakama mentioned in the pasuk Levana refers to these 2 narim. This is how it is explained in the Kotei Torah and Yeshaya, that the verse is speaking about Zun as they are enclosed within Yitzira and Asiyah. The reason this fits is because, as explained in Parshas, there is a difference between Shemesh and Chama. Shemesh is mitzad yamin, Shemesh tzedakah umerape b'chnafeh, whereas Chama is mitzad smell, the heat of fire. Gevura, and Gevura is that the tzimtzum, where the light is drawn down into Biyah. It must be through contraction, like tzimtzum shechinase ben bali ha'ar. Elsewhere it is explained that Shemesh is the luminary itself, the source from which light spreads, while Chama refers to the warmth, which is heated from the sun, meaning it is the light of Zaz that is drawn down into Biyah. Therefore, this level is called Nar, the Nar Ha'elyon, whereas Shemesh itself is like the Chasen, the essence of Zah and Atzilus. With this, we can better understand the idea that the elevation will be Shivasayim Kar, Shivasayim Yaman. The 2 Narim are the intermediaries to which the light of Ein Sof, as it is enclosed in Atzilus, connects to the created beings, just like the light of just like the sun and the moon illuminate the earth and its inhabitants. Because in truth, there is absolutely no comparison between created beings, limited and finite, and the light within the spheres of Atzilus, which is infinite. So how can that light be drawn into Biyah? Only through many tzimtzumim. First, the light is called Shemesh, is contracted to shine in a limited way. This is the Hakama, the Nar Ha'elyon. From there, it is drawn down into Malchus, which is the Pnei Levan, the source of Biyah within Atzilus. This is the second Nar. These two correspond also to the 2 Kruvim, and like explained elsewhere regarding Yam and Yebusho and Malchus, that the intermediary must include 2 aspects, one connected upward to Atzilus, and one downward is the source of Biyah. Now, just as there is no comparison between Biyah and Atzilus, even more so, there is no comparison between Atzilus and Ein Sof itself. So for the light of Ein Sof from above Atzilus, from Adon Kadmon, to be drawn into Atzilus, this too requires tzimtzum, as explained in Tanya. Through these contractions, the light can shine in Atzilus. This light, called Shivas Hayamim, meaning the level of Malchus of Adon Kadmon, which becomes Atik for Atzilus, designed Tachtena, that become enclosed in Archampin, are the 7 days, and the higher levels are called the light of the 7 days. And certainly there is no comparison at all between Aracham of Levana, which are the light of Atzilus as it shines into Biyah, and Shivas Hayamim, which is the revelation of the infinite light within Atzilus itself. Therefore, the sun and the moon in their present state are called Naidim, a level of contraction and katnus, whereas Kesed of Atzilus is called Atik Yomin. But in the future, when the worlds will be elevated, Biyah will rise to the level of Atzilus and even higher than Levana of Aracham, which are now the divine light as it shines in Biyah, which will become even greater become greater even than the current level of Shibas Yom. For example, the son, Yesod Atzilus, the level of Yosef, who was called Nar, will be elevated to the level of Yesod Adam Kadmon, which influences Malchus of Adam Kadmon, that becomes Adik of Atzilus, the level called Shibas Yom. This is also connected to Pnim Yisatik, the hidden inner light, Hagonas, as hinted by Upanai Lo Yidro. This is also the idea of Melech HaShmini Hadar, a level higher than both the breaking tayu and the tikkun, the one that rectifies everything. Since similarly, the moon will also become like the sun. This is the meaning of Nadam Pneimis Kenim Yalbinu. The youths will rise above the current level of elders. Another explanation connected to what is written in Shir Shirim sometimes says Sade Shikama Naka, white hair, and sometimes sites of Taltalim Shchedis Kaid of black curls. These correspond to positive commandments and prohibitions. The Zakan is white, refined, whereas Nar has black hair, representing the intensity of youth with strong desires and passions. At that stage, one must exert great strength to restrain oneself, to push away evil and sanctify oneself even in what is permitted. And this is V'narim Pneiz Kenim Yalbinu. Through this avodah of Skafi in youth, one draws down a much higher revelation of what comes from the white hair level. This is the deeper meaning of Shchirani V'nava. From the darkness comes a higher beauty, the source of whiteness itself. With this, we can understand the question asked in Tanya is, if it's according to his way, what's the greatness? But according to what we've explained, although youth is a state of katnus compared to old age, the advantage is that the effort and self-control during youth, when one has full strength and passion, draws down a very high light, and that light remains forever, even when he grows old. That's explained elsewhere. This is also the idea of us tismach b'sula b'mchil v'churim b'skeinem yachta, the unity of youth and age through this higher revelation. Another explanation of Elhevana Karachama for Erachama Yeye Seba'tim is as follows. It is written, Elheikim. The name Havaya is called sun, and the name Elheikim is called the shield, which is also the level of the moon. In the future, it says Vaya Havaya Elheikim, meaning that through the revelation of the essence of Ein Sof, which is far higher than the name Havaya, than the name Havaya itself will be like what the name Elheikim is now relative to Havaya. So just like now Elheikim conceals Havaya, in the future Havaya will be like a concealment relative to the revelation of Atmas or Ein Sof. This is the meaning of our Levana, that the future level of Shem Elheikim, which is called the moon, will be like the light of the sun, meaning like Shem Havaya, as it says, Vaya Havaya Elheikim. Because Shem Elheikim corresponds to Yichud Hatav, the source of Biaor, called the attribute of night, therefore it is called the light of the moon. But in the future it will be like the light of the sun, which is Midas Yeh and the light of the sun of the future. This higher unity will be Shibasayim Kar Shibasayim, meaning it will reach the level of Atik, as explained earlier. This is also what the Medrash says on the Pasuk Leil Shiburim Hula Havaya. In this world, Hashem performed miracles at night, but they were temporary miracles. However, in the future, night itself will become day, as it says, referring to the original light that Hashem created and hid away in Eden. The idea that night becomes day means that the levels of Biya will be like the level of Atzilus. This is also the meaning of Mismach, and וכלה, and Mismach, and Hakala. The sun is called the Chasen, as it states, as it says, and the moon, which receives from the sun, is the Kala. At the beginning of creation, it says, the two great luminaries were equal. Afterwards, the moon was diminished, and each month its light wanes and renews, like a bride who each month has a time of separation, and then becomes purified and reunites with her husband. The time of their union, sun and moon, is the level of Ki Havaya Hu Elheikim. And this is the idea of Meshamech and וכלה. But in the future, when the moon will be renewed and elevated to its original state, like the two great luminaries equal in stature, then it will be Mismach im hakala, with complete equality between them. This is also why Besula and Isis Liam Hervi, the fourth day when the luminaries were originally set as equals, and only afterwards the moon was diminished. Now the state is Ki Nifalti Kamti. There is descent and then renewal, corresponding to Mismach and וכלה. But in the future, Mehedi Yeshama, they will be equal again. Therefore, specifically, the fourth day alludes to this deeper union and ultimate elevation. With all this, we can understand at least a little the idea of the 7 days of the milloim. The Medrash and the Zohar ask, Pasuk says, K'shivas yamim yamali es yadchem. Should have said, B'shivas yamim, in 7 days. So what does it mean, Shivas yamim yamali? The explanation given is that yamali is referring to that higher shemen ilah, the supernal oil through which the kohanim were anointed. That oil itself is what fills and completes the 7 days. From it comes the entire completion and consecration of the kohanim. The idea is that, as explained in the Pasuk of the 7 days refers to the 7 days of creation and also to the 7 days of the milluim. The Torah even says explicitly that these are miluyim vade, true filling and completion, where the moon malchus returned to its full state, waning. This makes sense because during the 7 days of creation, before the sin of Adam Rishon, the worlds were on a much higher level. Gan Eden was for Adam like what we call the world to come, and what is now considered reward was then the place of actual avodah. All the worlds were elevated far higher, as explained in the writings of the Arizal. The levels were positioned much higher. Bri was in the place of Zah, of Atzilus, and so on. Therefore, the Arizal says that the 7 days of creation correspond to the Zayin Tachtenim of Atik, because that level was shining then, and the worlds were refined and elevated. But after the sin, the worlds descended and the Shekhinah withdrew. The building of the Mishkan is a tikkun for this, to bring back the Shekhinah into the lower world, to make a dwelling place below, and to reveal again something of the Shivas Yamim. That is why they are called Shivas Hamiluyim, days of filling and completion, because they restore and the lack and the deficiency. This filling is drawn from the level of total completeness from Shivas Yamim. However, it is not exactly the same as the future revelation, which will be from Atik itself. Rather, here in the Miluyim, it is from the level of Bina, but Bina relative to Zah functions like Keser and Atik, because from Tiferes, the Ima becomes the Keser of Zah, and also Bina is sometimes called Atik in the Zayar, and the revelation of Atik is expressed to Bina. So when it says that Shemini Law completes the 7 days, it means that this oil is like the Shivas Yamim, the light above the 7 days themselves, meaning the higher light, that gives vitality to the 7 midas. Here too, the 7 days of the miluyim correspond to these 7 midas, and the shemen is the light of the hakama that shines into Bina, which is called the 7 days. Therefore, it says Yimale in the singular because it refers to that one that fills them all. Then comes the 8th day. This corresponds to a higher level, like Shivasayim in the future. The 7 days here are associated with Bina, and their light is the illumination of Chachma within Bina. But the 8th day is the revelation of the essence of Chachma itself, like Shemini Atzeres, where the inner level of Chachma is revealed more directly. So here too, Shemini Lamiluyim is revelation from Chachma itself. In some places, the Zohar calls Bina the 7th, so the 8th is Chachma called Mika the Chula, the deepest level. However, elsewhere the Zohar explains that the 8th day refers to Malchus, because the ultimate purpose of all the drawing down of light is that it should be revealed in Malchus, in the lowest level, in actual existence. The whole intention of creation is that there should be a yesh, and that this yesh should become batel. And this is specifically in Malchus, and to reach that it requires an even higher drawing down from a level beyond even from only such a high level can ultimately bring the revelation into Malchus. This is the meaning of that through the highest revelation it is drawn all the way down into Malchus, as it says, through Chachma, the earth Malchus is established. And similarly, the 8th day is connected with the ultimate purpose drawing down into Malchus, which is the culmination of everything. It can also be explained that the 8th corresponds to Melech Hashmini Hadar, a level beyond the previous Seder. Therefore, on the day the Mishkan was erected, the 8th day, it says Vayinayim, because the ultimate blessing is the revelation of Hashem's Malchus below. And another way to understand the idea of Miluyim is that it means a drawing down and filling, drawing the light from the level of Seva into Malakalam. And this is also the idea of Shivas Yamim, that level of Kester service as the intermediary that connects and draws down the light of the infinite emanator in Sev Baruch Hu into the emanated worlds. Now, it is known regarding the Pasuk as the Shemayim Betharat and Imalia, I fill the heavens and the earth, that Ani refers to its very essence, and yet it also says the whole earth is filled with his glory, and Kavod means only a radiance, a mere glimmer and illumination. The explanation is that although his essence truly fills the heavens and the earth, nevertheless he is wholly and completely separate from the worlds, and they cannot grasp him at all. What is drawn down and revealed within the worlds is only a radiance, a reflection of his glory, or through Torah and mitzvahs, and specifically through the building of the Mishkan and the service of the Karbanos, there is drawn down in actual revelation of the light of Seviklam itself, the level of Ani Mali, that it should become revealed mamish, as it says about the future Mala that says Hashem, and this is the meaning of Shibas Miluyim, to draw from the level of Azashmayim Sarat Ani Mali into the level of Malach Lord Kavod, and elsewhere, and as explained elsewhere on Ulam Chai Ani Bi Malach Hashem, and the beginning of Yikar regarding the fact that it does not say Mali in a Parshas Nasi regarding Shem Mali, and in what is explained on Esmes Beri Machamali, there is a concept the circumstances of filling the days. And in this context as well, he is called a Masnase, the level of Sevikalaman, and the 7 days of Miluyim are to draw from that transcendent level into the days of the world. The Midas of Asilis. This is also the meaning of Kishibas Yom Yumale Esyatchem, because the Kain represents Chesed, the right arm that draws close to Shvina de Maternisa. And it is known that initiation must come from a higher level, and that is from the higher oil, the light and vitality of the 7 days, which are the 7 lower Midas. From there is drawn down the strength and ability for the Kain demand of Chesed to elevate. And further, another explanation of Yemei is based on what Chazal say on the Psuk that Torah was only filled from the destruction of Yerushalayim. As explained in its Chaim, the Machas of Atzilus was initiated initially only in a Kudah, and the 9 lower spheres were added from above. But at the time of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, those 9 spheres fell into the Klippos. This is the meaning of Torah became filled. In Avodah, this corresponds to a person whose faculties, his intellect, and emotions become fully invested in the desires of the animal soul. In that case, the animal soul becomes fully developed, while the godly soul remains only in a kudeh, simple faith. As we see even in the lowest state, and even a thief calls out to Hashem, yet he still transgresses, because that faith remains only in a surrounding external way. What is needed is das, drawing that point into premise into the intellect and emotions, and through this, the koyach of the animal soul is weakened, because light pushes away darkness. This is also the idea of transforming. Yerushalayim, when rebuilt in completeness, causes the forces of the animal soul to dissolve. This is the idea of aliyasa kinot, that in the future, the harp will have 10 strings, meaning that all 10 spheres will shine in a revealed and constant way in the soul of a person until the and likewise above it, as your soul, all 10 spheres will shine in a permanent way. This is also the meaning of what our Chacham say, that redemption comes only through a complete Redeemer. And so too, Yemei means that Hashem, that to draw the fullness of blessing into Malchus, that it should lack nothing. And Malchus is called Kala because it receives from Kol, and this is like Vayar because the diminishment of the moon is the removal of the 9 spheres from Malchus, and in the future, when it will be restored, it will shine like the sun with constant light. And this parallels the idea of Yemei HaMiluyim, and this is the meaning of the Psuk B'yem Chavosh Hashem Shever Amay Machatz Makasei Machatz Mekita Yedafe. The breaking of his people refers to the state of Umale Achrava, which comes from Kishtaim also Ami Lachtelhem Bedis Nishbar, and broken cisterns, meaning attachment to physical desires rooted in the breaking of the vessels. And this leads to a double evil, filling sword through the destruction of Yerushalayim. But in the future, the breaking will be transformed into hope and healing, and the root of this is the sin of the tree of knowledge called an Eshuach, which caused the descent and lowering. But in the future, the tree of knowledge will be rectified and united with the tree of life, and then an Eshuach will produce fruit immediately, meaning that godliness will be revealed below just as it is above. As it says, that in the physical world itself there will be revealed godliness, and this is the ultimate fulfillment of our Hellvana, Hakama. Mimer 6. Lav mashakatsa Bahagada matasu Shaну Oitlam Shuma Asham Shispeck, but Sekas Shalabaseno, Sekum Shalabaseno Hasmas Kigurushu. It seems to imply that if they had not been driven out and the dough had time to rise, they would have eaten chametz. This is difficult because they had already been commanded on the 10th of the month of Matzah, and for all generations we were commanded Also, the pasuk itself implies that the command for all generations is a remembrance for the Exodus, yet Pesach and Mitzrayim only had a prohibition of chametz for 1 day, as stated in the Gemara. The explanation is that in Mitzrayim indeed was only 1 day, and therefore it was specifically because they were driven out that they ended up eating matzah for the rest of the days. Nevertheless, the command for all generations is 7 days, as a remembrance of the Exodus. To understand somewhat the idea of eating matzah, you first need to explain the idea of Moedin with Simcha. The essence of the festivals is joy. As it says, this is the time of the revelation of Moedin, the Imos, it says in Hallel, now on Shabbat there is revelation of Moedin the Abba, which is higher. Therefore, it is not the same revealed joy as Yom Tov. The explanation is as follows. There are 2 general modes of revelation of light of Ein Sof Baruch Hu. One is the order of a chain of levels, one flowing from another, like intellect into emotions, emotions into thought, and so on. The entire order is called yesh miyash. The second is the level above yesh miyayin. from absolute nothingness. In the system of cause and effect, when the lower level rises and comes close to its source, it can grasp it, and therefore it rejoices like a prince who was in captivity and then returns and sees his father the king. His joy is immense. So too, in the lower level, experiences a revelation of its higher source after having descended through many levels and becomes distant. Joy is great because it now understands how it has come from darkness to great light, from sorrow to yomtov, from bondage to redemption. This is the idea of Yom Tov, revealed joy, where a Karsabaya, which is Malchus as it exists during the weekdays in the lower world, becomes Ema Samecha, rising to the level of Bina, understanding and comprehension in the revealed light of Ein Sof. The light then descends in a way that allows some degree of grasp and perception so that one can understand and feel the transformation from darkness to light. This is similar to the soul's pleasure in Gan Eden, enjoying the radiance of the Shekhinah after having been in a physical body. There is a profound delight because there is comprehension, a revelation of the infinite light in a way of something that can be grasped and enjoyed. This is Benar of Yavrod Berego Sham Tchabay. The river is Bina, which flows from Eden, and the festivals there is an ascent to that level, and there is the source of joy. All of this is from Meichen, the Ima Bina, where there is a grasp and comprehension. But Meichen the Abba Chachma is different from Chachma Yai too much. It comes from a level beyond comprehension. There, the light of Insab is revealed in a way that lays Mashawat's visible. No thought can grasp it, therefore there is no felt pleasure or joy there, because joy depends on some level of awareness, comprehension. Rather, the experience there is total bittul, the nullification of the soul's existence in the infinite light. This is the revelation of Shabbos. This is why they said it was only barely permitted to speak words of Torah on Shabbos, because Torah is an outward expression of Chachma, but the essence of Chachma itself is far higher. In this level, there is no concept of higher and lower, because Kaor, darkness is like light. Not only does darkness not obscure, but even light itself is considered like darkness relative to this level. All lights become dark before him. Therefore, there is no revealed joy there, because there is no sense of ascent from low to high. Rather, everything is equal, and there is only bittul. This is the meaning of Yeh, whether relation is in the mode of yesh, within grasp, comprehension, or ayin, beyond all grasp. And this corresponds to the two levels: bina, where there is joy through understanding, and chacham, which is rooted in ayin, beyond understanding. And this is also alluded to in the Klal Shab, whose acronym is Eden Nar Gan, Eden Chachma, the river, Bina, and Garden, Malchus. On Shabbos, the flow comes from Eden itself, beyond the level of the river, which is beyond comprehension entirely. Base, and this is the meaning of Shematim at Shabbos Kodesh. He is holy. He Batzma is itself. It itself is the level of Kodesh Elyon, the level of Chachma, which is revealed on Shabbos. Whereas Yom Tov is called Mikra Kodesh, only a calling forth of holiness, and mere radiance from the higher holiness, meaning the lower levels of Abba, and he, the Abba, as they are drawn into Mechad the Abba. Because even on Yom Tov, when there is a revelation of Mechad the Ima, there must still be a drawing down from Mechad the Abba. For although Mechad the Ima are in the category of yesh, they are not, heaven forbid, something separate. They are a yesh. Comes from ayin, since Chachma and Bina are two companions that never separate. Therefore, there must always be a flow of bittul from Meichen the Abba into Meichen the Imus, that the revealed pleasure is also rooted in the light of Ein Sof, who not a pleasure from grasping something separate, heaven forbid, but rather a pleasure from the revelation of that light as it descends and becomes graspable to the extent that one can understand that it is a very great light. Because everything below is considered nothing before him, therefore, when this light is revealed, one rejoices in it. But even in this joy, one must draw from Meichen the Abba, so that the joy comes from the revelation of the infinite itself. This is the meaning of Mikra Kodesh, like a person calling his friend by name. The name is only a radiance, an external expression of the person. So too, Mikra Kodesh is a calling forth from the level of name, only a radiance from Abba. Now, this drawing down of Yom Tov comes through prayer and hal, but these are only rabbinic. From the Torah itself, on Pesach it is drawn down through eating matzah, which is called katan of the Abba. As it is known, a child does not know how to call father until he tastes grain. This awareness of the child comes from the level beyond intellectual understanding. Since the child does not truly understand what his father is, so too matzah has no taste, it has no expansion or elevation, and it represents the level beyond that, which is called Abba. But as it is drawn down in a small contracted way. Therefore, it's called Nazer Michla de Memusa, the food of faith. And this drawing down of Mechad the Abba through matzah is only on the first night. After that, although it says matzah is Yechal es Shabbos Yamim, that one should feed all the 7 days from this level. Nevertheless, in Pesach Mitzrayim, the prohibition of Chametz was only for 1 day, because they had Moshe and Aaron, who are themselves from the level of Abba, and also the pillar of cloud, another Aaron, which represents the surrounding that of Abba, which blinds the forces of impurity and prevents them from drawing nourishment. Therefore, it was sufficient for them to have this drawing down of Mechad the Abba on the first night alone. But for all generations, we eat matzah for 7 days. Even so, The main obligation for matzah, bet of teichel matzah, is specifically the first night. The rest of the days are primarily bet avoiding chama, so that there should not be any nurture for the external forces. And this corresponds to the idea that the first day includes all the days, yom the azal and the day of chesed, which encompasses all kitzin and kodesh, the day of kodesh and mikra kodesh. The Meshach of Yom of Pesach is to the matzah, similar to any tinik like of Abba, and the Pirish mitzvahs yichal eis shivas hayamim. Gimel, and now it comes out that there are really two levels of matzah: the matzah of the first night, which is a chayva, and the matzah of all the days of Pesach. About this second level, it says that though they did not have time to rise, because in truth our forefathers did not need this level of guarding matzah for all 7 days, as explained earlier. Rather, by them it happened automatically, because the King of Kings revealed himself to them. The simple meaning of Melech Malchim Lachem is that the Malachim is the Malachim, the kings down here in this world. Malchei Malachim are the ministering angels above. In the as it says in Daniel Yud Samalchas Pare, etc. Akadosh Baruch Hu Hashem the Melech al Malchim Lachem. He's the king of kings. And furthermore, Melech Malchim Lachem is the Yebusho's Malchus, and it's in Haggah with the worlds through the 10 spheres. Malachim, that's Nehi. Malchei is Chagas. Melech Malchei, this is Chabad, because in the world of Bria it shines the Nehi, in the world of Bria it's shiny Chagas, in the world of Bria, Bina, but Natzilus is Meir Chachma. Chachma is dwelling there in Sefer, which is called Melech Malchim Lachem. And the relation of Chachma, the relation of the Abba that's revealed in the way of revelation, therefore automatically it does not leave the dough to rise to be any unique chas v'shalom. This is like the pasuk Yarias Hashem b'ni umelech fear Hashem, my son, and the king, just as one fears an earthly king, even when he is not seen, so that fear holds a person back from wrongdoing. So too, when it's true fear of Hashem, the King of Kings, then you'll rule over your inclination. And the Yetahara is the chametz. It says chametz from the language of inflation and arrogance. Therefore, when nigla automatically there was no room for chametz at all. But for us, it has become a command for all generations. Because the 7 meters are where the Torah has hold, since the breaking was in the 7 lower spheres, and therefore each of them needs to be filled with a bittel of matzah. Now, the first level of matzah is what the pasuk refers to as because of this Hashem did for me. This refers to matzah. Through matzah there was a drawing down of Mechad Yabba, and therefore the revelation of Hashem Vaya is drawn down all the way into into my actual physical state. And how is it possible that the Jahai is drawn all the way down to Li, into physical Egypt? Only because matzah draws from Chachma, which is beyond the others, where darkness and light are equal. From that level it can reach even the lowest place. This is the meaning of I myself am not an angel, because angels belong to say there's even the very high ones. But the relation here was from beyond that, Abba, the source of Chachma, so no angel could serve as a keli for it. But then it says, I am not another. What is this other? The explanation is that even very high revelations like the Yud can sometimes extend, even where there is unworthiness in that. From that level, and from there can be unique to external forces, as was the case with power. Therefore, Moshe requested that the revelation should be specifically within holiness and not spread outward. And this is accomplished through the mitzvah of matzah, because when the drawing down of the Abba comes through, it's just the side of the action of a mitzvah. Then it is drawn specifically into the premise of kedusha and not to the outside. This is why we say li v'loy. If he were there, he would not have been redeemed. So the matzah itself is what brought about the Yitzhak, because it's also a sudden revelation of Erdaba. However, the 7 days of matzah come after Yitzias and Tzvarim and are mainly for future generation, because our forefathers did not need this ongoing avodah. By them it happened automatically. And now Overzah specifically applies only when there is matzah and mar. Mar represents bitterness over one's distance from Hashem, which arouses the Yidglam Yitzrachim. This only applies in the present time, when there is bechira. Mar itself corresponds to Mav's death, meaning attachment to physicality, which conceals the cost. Therefore, one must feel bitterness and choose to turn to life towards Ruchnius. But last it says, death will be swallowed forever. There will be no concealment, no need for Mar. And even matzah, as guarding from chametz, will not be necessary, because there will be no possibility of chametz at all, either because of total bittul or because even chametz itself will be elevated and not feed the external forces. This is why in the future, even chametz can be holy, like the chametz of carbon and the shtei lachem. Therefore, Overzah drawing down this level of revelation is specifically now when there is matzah and Mar in the time of action. When we draw down the level of Zeh, a direct revelation of our Intzeif, Haseviv, where everything is equal before him. Finally, we can answer the original question: why did we say matzah is because the dough did not have time to rise. If we already commanded earlier to eat matzah, the explanation is that the end is already included in the beginning. The true reason for matzah is that it did not have time to rise when Hashem was revealed. The earlier command, matzah, is already hinting to that future revelation. And in truth, these are the two levels of matzah. The first is from below to above. The lower fear, and from that comes the second achil, is the higher revelation corresponding to Yevel and Ketzer. This is to the first level, when we reach the second the revelation of the Shechina, but made a gadol to get the Shechina until not Chosim Sefer, and the beginning is rooted in the end. We need to understand why it says 6 days you should eat matzahs when earlier it already said 7 days you should eat matzahs. Over the idea is not to warn about the obligation of eating matzah, rather to explain that on the 7th day there is hatzeres. And from the fact that it says 6 days you shall eat matzahs, the meaning is that through eating matzah for 6 days, through this there will then be hatzeres. And to understand what is the connection between eating matzah for 6 days and thereby coming to the Yom Hatzeres, and furthermore the idea that on the 7th day Hatzeres Hashem, your God, is because of the 7th day of Pesach, was the miracle of the splitting of the sea. Now Pesach in Egypt had a prohibition of chametz only for 1 day, and nevertheless they merited the splitting of the sea without eating matzah all 6 days. So why, for later generations, it said 7 days you should eat matzahs, and moreover that specifically through eating matzah for 6 days it can come to be on the 7th day and Hatzeres. Also to understand why regarding the 7th day of Pesach it says Hatzeres to Hashem your God, while regarding Shmini Hatzeres it says Hatzeres shall be for you. And also to understand what it says, and they baked the dough that they took out of Mitzrayim as matzah cakes, for it was not chametz because they were driven out of Egypt and they could not delay, which implies that this is giving a reason why they baked the matzah and not chametz, because they were driven out and did not have time to rise. And this is difficult. The chametz was already forbidden to them, at least for the first days. It says in Pesachim. So how could they have baked chametz at all, that it needs a reason that they were driven out? Also, to understand what we say in Agada, this matzah that we eat, for what reason? Because the dough of our forefathers did not have time to rise until the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, revealed Himself to them and redeemed them. For even without this, they were already commanded with matzahs and murder shall eat it. And furthermore, that revelation of the King of Kings was after midnight, while the command with matzahs and murder shall eat it is before midnight, since the Pesach offering may only be eaten until midnight. And likewise, this matzah that we eat is also specifically before midnight. So how can it be? Because He revealed Himself. The explanation is that because in the evening you shall better techel matzahs is written matzahs without a vav, while regarding in the baked matzahs is written matzahs with a vav, and this vav represents the drawing down. The King of Kings revealed Himself to them. It's explained in the Yeh stuff comes out about alpha and the Parsha Pinchas and alpha base. And thus there are two levels of matzah. One that is in the evening usually matzah, which is the matzah before midnight, written without a vav. And the second is the baked matzahs, which is the matzah after midnight, written with a vav, meaning after He revealed Himself to them. Therefore, it says in the Haggadah, this matzah that we eat, because the dough did not have time to rise until the King of Kings revealed Himself, which refers specifically to the matzah written with a vav, that was after midnight. And this matzah that we eat is also from this level, as it is written 6 days you shall eat matzahs with a vav, and from which it is understood that the matzah we eat is also from this level and this higher aspect, and therefore through this, it is drawn down that it should be on the 7th day and not Hatzeres. Base. And to understand all this, you first need to explain why it says that bread, not on bread alone, does a person live. With this, the question is resolved: how can food give life to a person? Bread is from the level of Tzemach, vegetative, and man is medaber, speaking, which is far higher. So how can the lower sustain the higher? Rather, not from the bread itself does the person live, but from the utterance in the mouth of Hashem that is enclosed within the bread, meaning that from the divine utterance, as explained like the Torah Parshas Tzav, the word of Hashem enters into that food, and it is what nourishes and gives life to the person. By telling the explanation, the same is true in man as well. There is within him the word of Hashem from Nasa Adam. So why does he receive life from bread which contains Tadshin? The explanation is based on what is explained in many places. He also as the levels of them have the root in Elamatay, which preceded Elamatay. However, they descend to many levels into Shvira Sakem that they fell down until they became physical things. But man's root is from Elamatay, and the essence of Tikkun is Chachma Datzilos. It is called the drawing down of Mechem, because Bechachma is Beridu, through Chachma refinement takes place. And the human being who possesses the intellectual soul, the root of its chain of descent is also from Chachma. Now, the breaking, the Shvira in Elamatayu was in the 7 midas, but these midas are from the level higher than Chachma Basilis and are called the Heimerabba. See, it's Chaim Shachas that even Das of Tayu fell in the breaking, so that within the midas there was also included a power of intellect. Therefore, the animal soul in man, which comes in Klippas Nega from the breaking, also has intellect and comprehension. However, because there was no inclusion and integration between them, the Kalas, they broke and fell, and thus became lower than man. Therefore, they need to be refined specifically by man, because but after they are refined, they give life to a person from their root, which is higher than man. And this is Mitzvah means the source and root from which the divine utterance things emerge into revelation. In their root, the bread comes from a higher level than man, as explained. This is also why the utterance Nas Adam is the last of the 10 utterances of Yad, and Teitze Yad come before because their root is in the Elamatay, which preceded Elamatikin, where the man's root is. Therefore, Nachum says, "V'hai delay amislach bu'uta delay achli biseh the Torah become the fine base," meaning that food adds vitality even to a person's intellect and wisdom. Likewise, the sage said that a child does not know how to call father until he tastes grain, because the root of food is higher from above the chachma of digging, and therefore it has the ability to strengthen and add even to a person's intellectual capacity. And similarly, this is the concept of in the tayu that are enclosed in physical things when they are refined and elevated into taking the root of the divine soul. This is accomplished through the service of Hashem, Kishma, and Tefillah. The additional strength and vitality that a person gains from eating for the sake of Hashem is included in echad v'havta, and it strengthens contemplation and arousal of love for Hashem, making the understanding, awareness, and love and awe much more powerful and deeply connected than from the divine soul alone. This is because within the food are enclosed that a which are higher than taken, and therefore they have the ability to elevate even the levels of chachma and within the divine souls, as known from the idea of achayis neises, and is explained in Parshas Tzav and Tefillah, Kishma and Tefillah, and the study of Torah and mitzvahs. Gimel, and based on the above introduction, we can also understand the mitzvah of eating matzah on Pesach as explained this. Every stuff comes down to a base, just as in physical understanding, a child does not know or comprehend anything until he tastes bread, as explained above. So too, when the Yidden left Mitzrayim, they did not yet know how to comprehend the greatness of Hashem until they ate matzah, which is the form of bread that comes from the upper earth, and through the mitzvah Hashem that is drawn down into this bread, the person lives, and the divine soul receives vitality to know and recognize the one who spoke and brought the world into being. Just as ordinary life force is drawn into the intellectual soul from physical bread, so too through eating matzah on Pesach there is drawn a life force that enables the divine soul to know. The idea is that chametz represents the rising and self-exaltation. It swells and lifts itself up, whereas matzah has no rising at all. Similarly, in the truth of Hashem, chametz represents arrogance and coarseness of klippa, whereas matzah represents lowliness, submission, and batalot sinchas. It says, "Ki es chametz levavi," comparing the heart that inclines to wrongdoing to chametz. As the sage says, "Kan they compare the Yitar to leaven, saying, what prevents the leaven in the dough prevents, because arrogance is the root of all false and to desire in all forms of evil." Now it is known that in the exile of Mitzrayim, Eden were very bound down below, and their intellect and emotions were confined within the narrow limits of physicality, which causes a sense of separateness. The main aspect of the Exodus was the revelation of Melech Machim, which Darian saved, that is beyond the entire state of the Rishlashes, and through this it was drawn into them a state of bittul, as it says, of through this higher fear and nullification they went out of the constraints and limitations. This revelation was after midnight. However, they were first commanded to eat matzah before midnight. This represents bittul haratz and submission and humility that come from Yirat Hatah. This serves as the preparation and vessel for the higher revelation in Yilah that was drawn and revealed after midnight. Therefore, matzah is called Nazir Michel, the man because faith itself is a form of bittul, where a person nullifies his intellect and does not seek reasons, but simply believes the truth with pure faith. This quality is drawn into the soul through the mitzvah of eating matzah. It is similar to the analogy mentioned earlier that bread is left to a person, as the sage said that the child does not know how to call father until he tastes grain. This child's knowledge in calling father is not in intellectual understanding. He does not know what his father is or why he should love him, yet he calls him father. This calling is his connection to his father, not through intellectual comprehension, but through simple recognition, which is a very low level beneath intellect. And yet that connection is extremely strong. His soul is deeply bound to his father's soul. That is because the awareness that comes to the child through tasting bread comes from the root of bread, which is not a level above intellectual comprehension, as explained earlier. Therefore, it expresses itself below the level of understanding, and that is why the connection is so strong. Similarly, in the matter of eating matzah, which is called Michel de Lusa, the faith is the recognition, awareness, and connection to Hashem. All the Yidden believe that He alone exists exactly as He was before the world was created. It says in Yisham Leishan. This drawing down comes from Bas Elyon because they ain't safe is above chachma, therefore it is drawn down and enclosed in the form of faith. This is why matzah is called Michel de Musa, because bread is the root in this level. Let's explain the analogy of a child calling father. However, that refers specific to worldly understanding through physical bread that comes from the physical earth. But in the mitzvah matzah of Pesach, there is drawn and enclosed a power from the upper earth, from which emerges bread that draws down this level, because itself. That one should know how to call to his Father in heaven with a strong connection, reaching the essence of the soul even without intellectual comprehension. This is the aspect of bittul, and from this is also drawn the ability of humility and which is the power of earth, from which bread emerges. Is explained elsewhere on and the aspect of earth even precedes heaven, and therefore specifically from it comes the fourth bread, as described above. And this aspect of matzah requires guarding, as it is written, that is to guard from external forces, so that it should not come to fermentation, which represents coarseness and arrogance, because it is in the state of yiratan, simple connection of faith, below the level of intellectual understanding. Therefore, it requires guarding. Therefore, it's called matzah lacking of, because it is still in the state of katnus. And also, matzah without of can be read as mitzvah, like strife, as it says in the Zohar, based that this strife is the struggle to nullify the sense of self and arrogance, as in letting and therefore this is before midnight. But the second night of matzah, the second aspect of matzah, specifically after midnight, after the coming Pesach, after it was revealed to them, etc. For the idea of Pesach is what is written in Pesach Hashem is skipping, drawing down, as it says, which is the revelation of it, that is far above the entire state of the worlds, which was revealed then in their divine soul. And this is the 4 levels of Malchus, shining the 4 worlds of Yah, but is Malchus itself, which is far above the entire state of the 4 worlds, and specifically through this revelation they were redeemed. As it says, therefore this revelation is called Gadol for Yire in the feminine form, first Yire Tata, which comes from Abiyah, Malchus of Abiyah in each world according to its level, but Gadol in the masculine form, the first Yire Ilah, which is drawn from the revelation of Melech as explained. And this idea, the second matzah after midnight, from matzah represents bittul, as explained, but the matzah before midnight is Yire Tata, and faith as it is below intellectual understanding, like in Yisrael and Chesed Nurayich, and in Messiah, like the child calling father, but the bittul of matzah after midnight is a true bittul in Ilah drawn from a revelation beyond intellectual comprehension that's shown then in their souls. This comes from the revelation of it that is beyond their statuses, which is shown upon them in a matter of and this is if therefore this matter does not require guarding from fermentation at all, since there is no hold or nurture for the external forces at this point level, because is which pursue the external forces, whereas Tata requires guarding. This is the meaning of Speak and that it refers to the second level where it is possible to ferment at all, due to the intensity of the revelation of Melech Machem, where there was no grasp for the external force, which are the yesh and arrogance called chametz. And this is the chametz, meaning it did not come to fermentation, because there was no hold at all for Egypt in this level that was revealed to them. Therefore, automatically chametz, even though from the time they left the time until they reached Ramses, even with the shortened journey, certainly enough time passed for the dough to ferment. Nevertheless, it did not ferment for the reason explained. Therefore, it says here it says matzahs with the vav, because the vav represents the drawing down. It was drawn into them from a gadol and yidei, like in prayer, and el elyon with an a vav added, whereas hagadol hagibra is without a vav. But yet tata is still matzahs without a vav, and therefore requires guarding. Whereas the second matzahs with a vav does not require guarding. And now we can answer the earlier question, how do we say by the matzah that we eat before midnight, that is because the dough of our fathers did not have time to ferment, when that refers to the second level, which is only after the revelation after midnight? The answer is that at that time, when Eden were still in Mitzrayim and night received Torah mitzvahs, they were not able to receive the great revelation of any gadol and the Ilah before midnight. Therefore, before midnight, there was only matzah without a vav, and through this preparation, they were then able to receive the revelation after midnight. And from this came the state of but after Eden received the Torah and mitzvahs at Sinai, and throughout the entire year draw down because of the Torah mitzvahs. Therefore, even in the matzah we eat before midnight, we're able to, through the Torah mitzvahs that proceeded, to receive the revelation of Melech from after midnight. It says Nazar matzah bekad misa v'labasar mitzvah. First matzah comes a mitzvah with a vav added. This mitzvah corresponds to the second level of matzah. Matzah is with a vav, because through Torah mitzvahs there is drawn down the tarach amudei of Kasser Elim, which is itself the idea of Melech Machem being revealed. Therefore, what was revealed to them at midnight, which is Eisratin, is drawn to us already in the matzah we eat before midnight, because we possess Torah mitzvahs, which are the very Ratzon Elyon. And this is what the Agada says, matzah shanou mashma, for when we say for when they were in Egypt in their state of exile within Klip and Tzaracha and had no Torah mitzvahs, they were commanded to eat matzah before midday. Matzah is without a vav, as preparations so they could later receive the great revelation. But we who already have Torah mitzvahs, through which one fulfilled and at least reaches Yinatata, what is the purpose of eating matzah before midnight? The answer is meaning that even though we eat it before midnight, the effect is not only from the first level of matzah, but also from the second level, the bittul gadol level, where it cannot ferment at all, from the revelation of Melech Machem that was revealed to them. This revelation is also drawn to us in our matzah for the reason explained. And how are these two levels contained within one matzah? As there's no difference between chametz and matzah, is only the letter hey, and the miloi of hey is also hey. Therefore, it is called hey kafula. These two hays alluded to in one hay of matzah correspond to the two levels of matzah explained. For the milui represents that which is hidden and concealed within the hay itself, and this hidden aspect within the hay, which is malchus, has its root in kesser because not chosim seif, and is explained elsewhere in Vati. The kayach means the relation of that which was hidden. And now we need to understand the idea of 7th day of Pesach, and not specifically through Sheish Yom Techel Matzahs first. Only then of Yom Shriya of Teres, which is the idea of Kiddush Yom Tov, as explained earlier. For the idea of sea and land above correspond to Amud Discuss and Amud Galya. This is like the physical sea and land below. Everything that exists on land also exists in the sea, except that on land is revealed whereas in the sea it is hidden, being submerged and covered by the sea that conceals it. See Parshat B'Shalach David Maskos Yasha. So to above Malchus that this is called both land and sea, when the illumination of flow Malchus extends and encloses itself into Biyah to give life to the worlds from nothing into something, worlds that are pure separate entities. This is called land. About this is Tachiyah, it's Nefesh Chayas explained as there are many places. See Parshat Mini Daflam Testament Beis explained it. Okay, there's that the primary coming into being of a yesh that feels separate comes from Malchus Dasidus because and becomes the Yadik Abri because Ein Melech B'Yam, whereas not from the Midas themselves, but it's not Malchus receives the light and flow from her Insav, the Midas Abatil specifically from her, it then flows into Biyah because the Insav, as it shines with the Midas Abatil, cannot be revealed directly in Biyah for Natilus to become a Gawechad. The Chas of Batilis is literally infinite, and there's no comparison at all to Chas of Bria, which is finite. The camp of Mechaber receiving influence love to Restashulus from Chas of Batilis. That is big walls explaining Keddish Av and therefore, the light must first be considered with the Malchus near it descends into Biyah. For the attribute of Malchus is exaltation and elevation, and generally exaltation involves withdrawal, not a lot of vitality descend openly. Therefore, Malchus is called sea because just as the sea covers and conceals what is within it, so Malchus conceals the midas of Atilas, sea balak al. Thus, this aspect of Malchus is Amud Kasib, what shines outward from her to create beings of Biyah, forming revealed world is called land. As stated in the Zeresh Yichas Mebes, these two correspond to the first two verses of Krish, Mashmai Sabach Shabbat, all this is specifically where when the flow comes, Derech Estash, Seder Stash from Atilas Biyah in the mode of Malay, where the distinctions of sea and land concealed and revealed worlds apply. So this is the order of Stash, the infinite light of Atilas cannot be revealed and finite created beings unless first concealed Amud Kasia, remaining hidden. Only a ray descends from it to become a source of influence for Amud Galya. However, on the night of the 7th day of Pesach, it was revealed tremendous, powerful illumination from above. There's lots from Marin Seif, Atzmai, the Civic Kalam, who equalize everything from Umatilas and Asir are literally the same. Thus, the concealment of relation of Amud Galya are equal before him, since he is not in the category of worlds at all. Therefore, when his level is drawn down, it transforms the entire order of the concealment itself becomes revealed like the revealed world, not merely that a ray emerges, but the concealment itself becomes a revelation. See, this is meaning a drawing from beyond our worlds to this revelation. The concealed becomes dry land, revealed openly below. This is the meaning of Malchus of Keisham. Malchus that seals which receives from Chachmei is the end of a seals where the lights are concealed. It's called sea. Through the relation of the concealment of the sea becomes actual revelation, dry land, meaning the very essence of the light of it has become revealed in Biyah. This is further understood from the desire that Echad and Vaya correspond to sea and land. Malchus is called the place of Echad, base. For in truth, regarding the essence of Hashem, the term Echad does not apply at all, since he's Yachad B'Chad alone, because I'll say Echad refers to his unity in the 7 heavens, earth, and 4 directions. Thus, this level is called sea, because the beings in the sea live entirely within it, like Amad Gasi, where everything is unified in Echad, nullified in Torah, but V'adr, but the Echad, the transformed expression, source of the revealed worlds, where it appears as if the world is an independent existence. Yet his essence is Yachad, and through Torah, the level of Yachad is drawn to revelation and explained the Shmiya V'aylan in Alehim, because Torah is called Mishalak of Medi from Kadmonish L'Olam. So to a Kirshanta, where it says this is the revelation of Kadmonish L'Olam, who is Yachad and B'Yuchad. Therefore, this revelation transforms into land, drawing the level of Echad into open revelation within Vad, meaning the revelation of Chadil within Ichad. And similarly with the Anshe Yerichai, who would wrap the Shema together, saying Echad V'Hafta without interrupting from Roshing from Chuzla and Vad, because they wanted the love to be drawn from the level of Echad itself, Yichud. But the halacha is not like that, because that level corresponds specifically to Kriyish Shamsov, which comes from Leila. Therefore, the mention of Kriyish Shamsov is in Emes V'Yatzav, after Yitzin Sraim, after concluding in Hashem, only then is Kriyish Shamsov mentioned as in Emes V'Yatzav. And this is the meaning of Sheish Yom Techel Matzah Yom Shviat. For Krisham took place specifically on the 7th day of Pesach, because the Yom Sov corresponds to Malchus, which is the 7th day as it is known. The first day is Chesed, and the 7th day is Malchus. Then there is drawn down, revealed the level of Ruch because no Seif Mitchlas and Meireish Mikadem Mesucha, but this revelation comes specifically to the first time in Sheish Yom Techel Matzah. As explained above, Vini Matzah is itself a drawing down of our Seif that is above the entire Seder Shalashos. Of the dilug that the dough did not have time to rise. Therefore, by eating matzah for 6 days, which means drawing the light of וכלה into revelation through the 6 meters from chesed through Yesod, then from this there comes the mashvi, which is tzeres malchus, meaning that what had been seen and concealed to dry land of revelation. This happens through Kadam, which is a drawing from Kadmeni Shel Elam, who is not in the category of worlds at all, not even in the sense of surrounding them. This is the Le'ela that is above us, Lasata, that comes through the performance of mitzvahs, and therefore it says the Atachadushin. Still, this drawing is specifically brought about by first having Sheish Yom Techel Matzah, which is the Lasata that draws down the Le'ela, drawing from the supernal will. Then, through this, the rest is drawn down, the relation from above, from Kalam, as explained elsewhere on and this is the Elehkem for Havaya, which is called sea, is in Havaya, while the Kim is the source of the flow in the Biaur, which is called dry land. On the 7th day, there is a revelation of that which is above both of these levels. Therefore, it is a teres lavaya lekecha. Then would have been called a vaya, which is the sea, and Amud discussed becomes lekecha, an actual relation. This is also the meaning of what teres is gathering in and drawing together. The waters were gathered and congealed and still like a wall until they became like dry land. Now, although in the context of spheres, the 7th day Pesach corresponds to Yesod, the not achas, it is known that is only in the cheshbon of which is the ascent of that through that ascent is had to be drawn down. That today, one day, and Yimim and so on. Therefore, the first day, which is revelation of Lamata on its own, is not counted, and we begin from the second day. But with regards to the drawing that comes Lamata, which is drawn on the first day, this is really the main idea of Chag Dilig, which is La'ila, whereas the drawing down, whereas the drawing brought through the counting of the Eimer reaches its main expression in Shavuos. Then the first day of Pesach is the first drawing at level Chesed, and the 7th day of Pesach is therefore Malchus. However, in Pesach Mitzrayim, because they had Moshe and Aaron and the 7 clouds of glory, they were able, even without eating matzah all 7 days, to extend the relation that appeared in the first day through all 7 days. Therefore, the prohibition of chametz only applies on the first day. But now it is not so. It's explained in Ma'amid on matzah too. And from here, we can also understand why it says here, it says whereas regarding Shmini, it says Alhechem. To understand, you first need to explain why we did not complete Hal throughout Pesach only on the first 2 days, whereas in Sukkot we complete Hal every day. The one idea of saying Hal on a festival is the great joy and praise of the additional light and revelation that shines from above, and Halal also means drawing down light and revelation from the expression Behilu Nere. As explained elsewhere, these two ideas go together by praise, and Halal one draws down the light and revelation. It is also known that the main mitzvah of reciting Halal specifically when one completes it, for then it is called a mitzvah, and when reciting blessing on it, according to all opinions. When this is recited and is skipped for it is only Avasayim, as Gemara says in Tainus. So it was difficult. Why do we not complete Halal at least on the 7th day of Pesach when there is such an immense relation from above all? The explanation is that when the Yidden left Mitzrayim, they were still in a state of katnus. They had not yet received Torah mitzvahs until Har Sinai, and therefore they were called Kinar Yisrael. So although they had revelations of tremendous miracles, which come from a mighty drawing of our insights, nevertheless the light only shone to them in a very katnus-like way. That is why Priyat Chaim in the Kavanas, the 7th day of Pesach, there is a mention of katnus. At first glance, this is surprising because the revelation came from above all stars. And there it says Talyabi Atika. But according to the above, it is understood the light was indeed from an extremely lofty level, but as it was received by them was in katnus because they had not yet received Torah mitzvahs. And when not yet complete, as there explains, this is like the love of the sun, which is 2 modes. When the sun is small, the Father's love is openly expressed with great intensity. He hugs him, he kisses him, he carries him in his arms. Even so, the love is only revealed in the child in a small way, because the child cannot yet understand or feel the greater things. When the son is grown, then although the Father's love is not expressed in openly hugging, kissing, he still extends to him far more deeply in teaching him wisdom and providing all of his needs in mature ways. So to above in the Exodus, when it says, "Now you so," since they were not yet complete, therefore even though the revelation was a great love from a very high place, still only shown within them in a state of katnus, and that is why Halal is not completed. Then, as for the first days of Pesach, on which Halal is completed, that is understandable because both parties desire it. And on a simple level, even though they were not yet complete, still they're very going out of Egypt from darkness to light, from the impurity of Egypt and the 49 gates of impurity to becoming servant of Hashem itself. And it almost matter for that we complete Halal on the day they left Egypt. And on Sukkot, which is after the Torah, the supernal love shines and extends into them in If they ate of God, it's like the father's love to the mature son, where it is expressed in greater things. Therefore, halal is completed every day of that festival with this introduction. The reason becomes clear why on Shemoneh Atzeret says Atzeret, because then the revelation shines into you yourselves. But on the seventh day, it says Atzeret, because it does not yet shine so fully into the mode of Lechem until the giving of the Torah. That is why Shavuos is also called a Teres. The Gemara, they said, Hakol maiden like Yebusho bein Lechem, but as brought in the Medrash and Shirashim, Shavuos stands in relation to the days of Pesach, like Shemoneh Atzeret stands in relation to the days of Sukkot. The reason is the same. On Pesach, the relation is not yet fully reached the mode of Lechem. The Chag Shavuos when the Torah was given. And regarding halal, the Ramaz explains in Parsha Emer that the secret of halal is to illuminate Malchus, whose the value corresponds to halal. Therefore, halal is not complete until Shavuos. To illuminate Shem Adna can be understood from what is explained elsewhere. Adna is similar to the idea of answering a Hishmer Abba. It says the halal is called Malchus because he shows praise Hashem. There is a complete halal, which is when Malchus is a complete part of, and an incomplete halal when she is only a half a part of in the chest downward. This difference, like between the first temple and the second temple, corresponding to Hey Ilah and Hey Tata. Similarly, the parts explain that halal complete and incomplete can be understood as Bina versus Malchus. More precisely, complete halal is when the moon is full, while incomplete halal is when the moon is lacking. According to the explanations above, these fit together. Complete halal is when Malchus receives such a great relation that she rises at the level of Bina, as in Leizaz Machava Imi. I am Ashkatsa Nimascha Shir in Beis Tupirishem in Kala, Lashon Kala, Shab Lashon Kala She'edian, Lashon Kalsa Nafshi. I'm Shkatsa say the Maskal Galal and Tame, Beina and Beni Yemahu Yeh Cholom. Mimer 8. Sheish is Yamim Teichel Matzah Saviyam Ashviyah says Lashem Lekachale Sasam Lacha. To understand regarding Shemoneh Atzeret says Atzeret Tilachem, whereas here it says Atzeret Lashem Lekacha. And also, what is the meaning of Lois Sasam Lacha? First should have said Melechas Avodah, since Melechas Echol Nefesh is permitted on Yom Tov. The explanation is that the Gemara Pesachim. In the Gemara Psachim, there is a machlokes among the Tanaim regarding Yom Tov. Rabbi Elazar holds that it is either entirely Lashem or entirely Lachem for yourselves, while Rabbi Yebusho holds that it is half Lashem and half Lachem, and both derive from the same pasuk. One says pasuk says Atzeres Lashem Lekacha, and another says Atzeres Lachem. Rabbi Elazar explains either all for Hashem or all for you, and Rabbi Yebusho explains divided in half and half. Nevertheless, from the fact that regarding the seventh day of Pesach it says Lashem Lekacha, it follows that it has a greater connection to being entirely Lashem than Shemoneh Atzeret says Lachem. With this, we can also understand why it says Lo Sasam Malacha. For since one can choose to make it entirely Lashem, therefore even Melechas Echol Nefesh would be prohibited in such a case. As Rob the Magen Avram, one who fasts Tanis Chalaim on Yom Tov is forbidden to do Malacha, even Melechas Echol Nefesh. The same applies here. If one makes it entirely Lashem, then all Malacha is forbidden. Now, the essence of joy is to rejoice in Hashem Himself, as it says, and although this joy must exist throughout the entire year, nevertheless, Yom Tov is called Maidim L'Simcha because then the joy of a mitzvah is in far a greater measure and intensity. The reason is that through mitzvahs there is drawn down an additional new light in Atzilos, and also within the vessels the divine soul is drawn from the Pneumius Akelim. Yet despite this, light drawn through mitzvahs does not become revealed within it in the way of Pneumius to be internalized within it as an inner light, even though the root of the divine soul is from the Pneumius Akelim of Biaor, where the light is indeed revealed internally. Nevertheless, within the divine soul it does not shine as Pnimi, but only as Makif. This is because the animal soul covers, conceals, and surrounds the divine soul, not allowing the light to enter within it in an internal way. This is the meaning of but on Yom Tov there is an additional revelation of light, and through this the vessel of the animal soul itself becomes refined. This is Mashgiach Menachalenis, and therefore then they are called Maidim L'Simcha, because joy is a form of revelation. For this reason they would bring Shalmi Simcha, which affects even the animal soul that conceals and hides the divine spark within a person and prevents the joy of Hashem. Through the offering of fats and blood upon the altar, the animal soul becomes included and elevated into the supernal fire to its root in the level of Pnei Shorshim Merkava Hel Yena. Therefore, through eating the meat of the Shlomim, they were able to rejoice in Hashem because the meat becomes an intermediary, as is known regarding the vitality and strength that a human medaber receives from Demet Chai, the inanimate plant and animal, and this is because their source is much higher than that of man in the secret of that their root is from only that through the breaking of the vessels they fell and descended below, becoming Demet Chai, but through the offering of the fats and blood which are included and elevated back to their source, the meat becomes a medium through which one can rejoice in Hashem. This is why they are called Shlomim, from the word Shalom, as brought in the Medrash, and also from the word Shlemus, as explained in the Zera. There are two Shaloms, Shlim L'el v'Shlim L'tata. Tata can be understood as the illumination of the powers of the divine soul within the animal soul, so that the body and animal soul do not obstruct. So to here, it means that the joy in Hashem is revealed even within the animal soul. This is similar to what is explained elsewhere regarding Shir Habar, from the expression Bar Levov, a pure heart. Thus, Shalmei Simcha refers to meat that has already been refined, and therefore gives strength and power to the animal soul as well. And this is the general comptov of the offering of Shalmei Simcha on every Yom Tov. Our Chacham said, "Ha'olam haba," the world to come, etc. They will not have no eating and no drinking. According to the Rambam, this refers to the Olam HaNeshamas, the world of souls. But the Ramban questions this. If so, what novelty is the Gemara teaching? Can a soul without a body eat at all? Rather, he concludes that it refers to the time of Tchias HaMesim, when a person will be in a body, and nevertheless there will be no eating. The explanation is as follows. The concept of eating is, as it says, Ichlureim shtu Shikrudeim refers to Chachma Bina, while Shtu v'Shikru Doidim Latata refers to Zah and Nukva. The meat is Chasik Gvura and Rachama, meaning in order for there to be a level of Reim, which is Chachma Bina, there must be a concept of eating. In order for there to be Midas, there must be drinking. For in him, blessed be he, since there is no comparison to him at all, there is no such thing as Chesed, nor even Chachma, as it says, Kulam Chachma Asisa. The Chachma itself is considered like Asiya relative to him, and it's called Adam da Asiya. As an Anchakim, allowed to call Ilan Midas Klal. From Midas are by definition limitation and measure, in order to give reward to the righteous so they can receive it, meaning to enjoy the radiance of the Shekhinah and to punish the wicked. For if there were simple, unlimited compassion, he would also have compassion to the wicked. Therefore, for there to be Chachma bin Midas, there must be eating, meaning a drawing down from above, as explained in the Zayar Eitz Chaim, that Abba receives nourishment from Mazal Hashmini. That is the idea of eating and drawing through the Mazalas. That is Ichludeim Leila. And in order for there to be Deidim, the Midas, there must be drinking, which is the descent of the influence downward until it becomes Midas, like drinking brings the food downward since water descends. This is Shtu Chulu, and Shichru is a revelation of Nichnas Yayin. Chulu, thus the concept of eating is understood. Now we must understand the idea of the seventh day of Pesach. Chacham said regarding Kisamtov that Ras of Shivcha Layam, a Meitrim saw to see what the prophets did not see. We must understand where is this indicated in the Torah that there was such a great revelation of godliness. Mount Torah it says Panam B'Panam Diber Chulu. But here, from where is it learned? The explanation is as it says, Matitzakelai, and also Hashem Ilacham Lochem V'atem Tachadishin. For speech comes from Chachma, it says Chachma Yasa Da'aretz Abba Yasa Berata, like the example of a child who cannot speak, and our sages say that a wise person does not speak in the presence of someone who is greater than him, like one who stands before a great king. The reason is, because he is so absorbed in receiving, he cannot express outwardly. At Kriyas Hamsuf, there was a revelation of godliness that is above Chachma. Therefore, it says V'atem Tachadishin. There was silence. Similarly, in Shemoneh Esrei, which is a taste of that revelation, in a state of bittul, one does not make an audible sound. This is also the meaning of he transformed the sea into dry land. It could have said simply he split the sea, but the deeper meaning is that sea represents the giver and land the receiver. The sea gives moisture to the land, which then produces growth. All rivers flow to the sea, and the sea is not filled, and from there they return again to the rivers. Otherwise, the rivers would dry up. Likewise, the clouds receive from the ocean and water the earth. But when there is such a great revelation, the sea itself becomes dry land, becoming like a wall, like a solid stone. This is again the waters congealed. This was a greater revelation than that seen by Yechezkel, who only saw a structured vision with distinctions. But at Kriyas Hamsuf, the revelation was beyond all vision, like Ais Kerach, a single unified state, as in and this is also the meaning of there was the cloud and the darkness, and it illuminated. Vayar is masculine, referring to the darkness. It was the darkness that illuminated. For in creation it says, there is a separation, a curtain, in order for there to be, say, there is taushlos and differentiation. Only on the first day were light and darkness mixed, but afterward they were separated. However, at Kriyas Yamsuf, the darkness itself shone, meaning the level of Yashes Chaychich Sisrei, which is above Ishtaushlos, from below it is called darkness, because the Leis Machrabat Tzvisa Bay, but in truth it is a higher light. Therefore, they did not bring Shami Simcha on the seventh day of Pesach, because the joy of that day is so great that it cannot come into internal revelation, which would be like eating, but only in a surrounding way, makeh, from above. Therefore, it says, Sham nismacha bay, there we rejoiced in him, specifically there. This is also the meaning of ha'elam haba'in bay lo yachil chulu, because in the future there will be a revelation of godliness from above Ishtarshlos, and therefore it will not be revealed in a primistic way like eating, but only as a makeh. And this is by the Gemara says that there is a dispute whether heaven or earth came first, and both are true. In action, heaven came first, but in thought, earth preceded. At Kriyas Yamsuf, there was a revelation of the supernal thought, where earth comes first. Therefore, it says they walked in dry land that See, meaning the revelation of that higher level. Mimer 9. We find that 3 festivals are called Atzeres. Chag Shavuos, the time of Matan Torah, Shmini Atzeres, which is the time of Simchas Torah, and the 7th day of Pesach. Yet what is said about the 7th day of Pesach is greater than what is said about all the others, for it says L'Hashem L'Kacha, and not L'Chem, unlike the other Yom Tovim, which are Chetzi L'Hashem, and Chetzi L'Hashem, Chetzi L'Chem, whereas this one is entirely L'Hashem. This is the day of Kriyas Yamsuf, and great was the spoils of the sea. This refers to the elevation of the sparks. And it also Shivcha L'Yam Chulu, and Kacham Ala Zreisa, like a child who cannot see far, and his father lifts him up so we can see. It is written Ad Chulu twice, for in the future it says Ve'hin of Yali al Nar Bayam Ruchai V'Yikol Zayin Achalim V'Hidrich Ben Achalim, and afterwards it says Oidcha Hashem Ki Anaftabi Yoshev Alchos and Achameni, and also Kemetes Chemet and Mitzrayim and under the flies, meaning just as when Yisrael passed through the waters of Yamsuf when they left Mitzrayim, which is the lowest level, save for the Chodargin, so in the future they will pass through the river to reach the level of Eiver Anar. It says Eiver Anar Yoshua V'Seichem Me'elam. The river is not yet to Eden, and it is known that Eden is a level of Riyah, and Nar Yatzim Eden is Bina, which is Shmiya and understanding through contemplation of his greatness. At Yamsov, it was split into 12 pathways according to the number of the tribes of the Eden, as it says Ligzer, the Geyser Yamsov Ligzer, so that each tribe would go in its own path, each according to its measure. But in the future it says Vikol is Vainachalim, corresponding to the 7 shepherds, the 3 forefathers, and the 4 foremothers. And now at present this level of Eiver Anar is not revealed, but in the future it says that in the flies I will show him wonders. A level of Riyah adds above, and this is Eidcha Havaya Kin, after the suffering, the hardship and subjugation and livelihood, and then Yoshua Apchos Nachameni, that through enduring poverty and pressure we will merit the revelation of Eiver Anar. This is why it says here and not 7 days, because this verse is speaking about the future, when the 7th day will be at the level of Eiver Anar that comes from Eden, where there is no eating at all. Therefore, there will be no eating of matzah, which is called lechem only. This is why it says without specifying malachas aveda, unlike the other Yom Tovim where echel nevesh is permitted. But on the 7th day in the future, includes even malachas echel nevesh, because there will be no eating at all, as explained. Now, although in the first nights of Pesach there is revelation of mechan nikadlos, as it is known, nevertheless, this is only temporary in a manner of dilog, not according to the natural order. Therefore, it is necessary to have Sfidas HaEmer after this revelation, in order to draw it down gradually. That is, each day refines 1 midah of the animal soul to the drawing down the level of today, day 1, and so on. This is like a person who gives his friend a purse full of gold coins. At first, the gift is received all at once, but afterwards he counts and enumerates the coins one by one in detail. Similarly, here, the general revelation comes first, and afterward it is drawn down and internalized gradually through Sfiras HaEmer. Number 10. To understand why the Yom Tov of Pesach is on the very day the miracle occurred, whereas Chanukah and Purim were on the day of rest afterward. That can be understood by first explaining the idea of Amali and Seviv. Amali refers to the light and vitality that is drawn from level to level in an orderly progression, first in the world of souls, then angels, until it reaches this physical world. As is known, this world receives from the 70 ministers, and they receive from angels, one higher than the other. But Savior refers to a light and vitality that is not drawn through a progression from level to level, but rather shines to all equally at once. An analogy can be seen in the soul. There are 2 types of influence. One is drawn gradually from intellect to emotions, from emotions to thought, from thought to speech, and so on. The second shines to all at once without such a progression. We see this when a person decides in his mind to move his foot. Immediately the foot moves without any delay for the influence to descend step by step. This must be because the light of the mind reaches the foot also in a non-gradual way. So to above, there are these 2 types of influence. Mamalek Alaman is the light that is revealed and drawn in an orderly progression. As it says, and Kavede means only irradiance. But Sevev Kalama does not become revealed in a direct way. Rather, it shines in an encompassing matter, yet not through a progression, and all are equal before it. Souls, angels, spiritual and physical, even clippers. As it says, as the Shemayim Besadatz and Imali, his very essence filled heaven and earth equally. Now, regarding Pesach, it says, Pasach Hashem ala Pesach, meaning that the miracle came through revelation in the manner of a leap, diluk, not through a progression from level to level. This is the level of Sevev Kalama, as it says, why was it necessary to be specifically this way, unlike other miracles, such as the destruction of Sancheiriv, where it says, Vayetze Malach Hashem Vayach B'Machna Asher or Tzisra. There was merely a mission, go and strike them. But in Egypt, the plague of the firstborn required distinguishing exactly who was the firstborn, even a firstborn to the father among people steeped in immorality, or even the firstborn to the mother among the elderly, something a malach cannot discern. Some explain it is because a malach cannot descend to such impurity, but this is not compelling, as the case of Asher shows. Rather, the point is that this required revelation of Sevev, the essence itself, ani, not the level of Mamale. With this, we can answer the original question. The Yom Tov is the drawing down of supernal holiness, and this revelation cannot take place until the external forces are first removed. As it says, therefore, by Purim, first they killed 75,000 of the enemies who were from Amalek, the root of Klip, and only afterward did they make a day of feasting and joy. It's like a king who wishes to dwell in a house. First, the house must be cleaned of all dirt and filth, and only afterward can the king enter. Therefore, it took 2 stages: first removal, then revelation, because the revelation there was from Amalek, which proceeds in an orderly way and cannot accomplish both at once. But the miracle of Pesach came from Kalama, which is not divided and shines equally to all, and therefore both things could happen at once in the same moment. Nogo from Mitzrayim, the plague of the firstborn, and the revelation of holiness to Yisrael until they said Hal. Although some say this was before and after midnight, in truth it was all at the same time, similar to the However, since Sevev is equal for all and before him, how does it then result in striking Mitzrayim while revealing holiness to the Yidden? The explanation is based on what is written in Priyetz Chaim on Avodah Meyinu V'Yitzienu Shem Lekenu, refers to Abba Ve'ima clothing the arms of Adachapin. For Yisrael's root is in the face. It says Yad Hashem Panav Ilacha. While Mitzrayim's root is from the back, Edif Pare, the nape. When there was concealment of panim, as it says, Vayamas Yosef Chalacha, the influence came from the back, like one who throws behind his shoulders, and therefore Avodah Meyinu Lapare, who also received from the air. Afterwards, V'Yitzienu Shem Lekenu, the influence was drawn in the mode of Panim, Yad Hashem Panav, and through this came true freedom. Also, though Mitaratz by the level of Seva Kalam is completely equal, nevertheless it shines through Mamala Kalam, as the Kav is drawn into the Chalal, and through this clothing, and Mamali through Avash Hilbisha, there was a differentiation. The Yidden received a way of Panim, and Mitzrayim the way of Achadayim. Through this, the redemption from Mitzrayim, from slavery to Egypt, was accomplished. See what was explained in Parshas Vayishlach and the Maimer beginning we have regarding Takbiyam Kanashim Shamitach and a Parshas Vaykates and Malakim Kamachayim, the explanation of Shkif Mekach Chomet Shemaim, Varach So earlier in the Maimer beginning Lahav Mashen Bahagada Matzah regarding any Achar, the Maimer Vachatim Akhil regarding Lahaflיא and the Maimer Shemini Chaisim. See also what is explained regarding how the Seviv shines through the level of Hamalei and the Maimer Vavila which Malchus. And what is explained elsewhere in the beginning of Parshas Vayikra regarding Sha'al L'cha Ois, that miracles come in 2 levels. First is in the manner of Hamek She'ela, which corresponds to the lower Hey Tata, that becomes enclosed within the garments of nature. And the second is in the manner of Hagbei Lamaila, like the miracles, manner of Hagbei Lamaila, like the miracles of Yishis Mitzrayim, Kiyasantu, which completely transcend the ways of nature because they are drawn from the revelation of Sevi Kalaman. However, even this shines through Mamali, and this is the meaning of Hagbei Lamaila. This corresponds to the letter Yod of the name Havaya, which is the idea of Ava Shalbishi, as explained above. Mimer 11. It needs to be understood. Why is it that the mountains danced while the sea fled? The Shalah explains that the flight corresponds to Avodah from Yira, fear, while dancing corresponds to Avodah from Ava, love. This is the difference between a Sar, a noble, and an Eved, a servant. When the king is revealed, the Sar, whose service is with joy, has his joy greatly increased. This is the mountains, which are the Midas HaRatzilus, from which the souls called Achim Lamakim, brothers to the Eibishter, are rooted, like a noble before the king, therefore they dance. But the Eved, whose service is with fear, when the king is revealed, the fear and awe intensify, and this is the sea from which comes the level of servant before the king, and therefore it saw and fled. And see what is explained regarding Sar and Eved in the Maimer Simchi, Bas, and in the Medrash B'Shalach, why the sea fled. Similar to Vayara and also in other places in Medrash Zayir on this idea. To understand this more deeply, we first need to explain the idea of the 7th day of Pesach, which when the sea split, it is explained in Priyetz Chaim. This is also the concept of the birth of souls. Thus it says, the idea is that the souls of the Yidden originally arose in thought, and at that stage they are called Achim V'Reim. They're brothers and friends to Hashem. This means that Hashem, as he is revealed in the Midas HaTzilas, for the essence itself is beyond any description, is called Havaya. Yod Chachma, Hebina, etc. The 600,000 souls rooted in the 600,000 letters of thought are like one with that thought, just as letters of thought are one with the intellect within them. At that level, they are literally like close for but in order for the soul to become a Yeh, she created being separate from Ayin. This comes through the level of Malchus, which conceals and hides, becoming a garment that allows existence to emerge. As it says, Hashem Lavish, kingship requires subjects who feel separate, for there is no king without a people. Therefore, Malchus is called Yam, sea, because just as everything exists in the sea but is hidden, so too too, the divine speech that creates all worlds is concealed within Malchus. If it were revealed, all existence would be nullified like sunlight in its source. Thus, the concealment through Malchus allows for souls and angels to exist as separate beings, though still in love and connection. This is why Malchus is called Ima Tata, the lower mother. The womb, because the soul is in a state of Iba, pregnancy within Malchus, from Shmini Atzeres. When we say Mary Gashem, souls are drawn into this womb and remain there for 7 months, until the 7th day of Pesach, the time of birth. Just as a physical child develops in the womb through nourishment, so too the soul receives higher lights until it becomes a yesh. But in order for birth to occur, for the soul to emerge from the concealment into revelation, there must be a drawing down from a level above Ishtarshlus. This is Ruach Kadam, meaning a drawing from Kadmeni Shel Olam, beyond all worlds. Through this, the sea concealment turns into dry land. Revelation, as there says, Batika Talia Milsa. This depends on Atik. When this great revelation shines, then Harabrak, through the mountains are Chesed, Gvura Teferes. The hills are lower level. Since they are above the level of concealment, they can be included and nullified within this great Ur, like a candle and a torch. Thus they dance. This is not a gradual ascent, but a leap beyond all order. Revelation of Sevikalam, like a deer Ka'ilab that acts beyond rational control, as explained elsewhere. But the sea, which represents concealment itself, cannot be included in this light, so instead it flees. This is like a person when there is an overwhelming light beyond intellect, speech ceases. Ishtik. This is why Moshe was kfad peh, and why prayer Shemini Esrei is silent. See also what is explained regarding this in the discussion of the 42 journeys and the 49 days of Sphira. All of this comes from from the revelation of the encompassing light, which transforms rock into water, gvura into chesed, nullifying all separatedness, as in Shalom ben Michal v'Gavriel. This was the nature of Pesach. Asher Pasach Hashem, a leap without, but afterwards comes the 49 days of Sphira, 49 days of Aveda from below, through which we reach Mount Torah Parshas Tzav. Further explanation of in the Mimer on B'midbar Sinai by Umayyad, based on Medrash Rabbo. Mimer 12. V'heinef yadi al nor bayom ruchlei v'kol l'shiv nechalim. Yamsov corresponds to Malchus Datzilus, which is the level of Dibur Ha'elin. For speech is the safe of all levels. It says, but Hashem Shemayim Natsu, and all the 10 utterances are drawdowns from the 10 spheres of Datzilus, which become enclosed in the letters of speech. Here is drawing from Chachma, etc. But speech conceals and covers over the light that is drawn into it. This can be understood through an analogy in a person. The letters of speech are vessels for the intellect and emotions that are drawn into them, yet the letters conceal the intellect within them. Like a child who can pronounce all the words perfectly, yet understands nothing of the idea within them. Only one who was already wise can grasp the idea through the letters. Thus, the letters themselves are a concealment relative to the essence of the intellect. So to above, the wisdom of the worlds of Bria and Yitzir and Asiya comes only from the supernal speech, not like the analogy where the learner is already wise. Therefore, the letters of Malchus, the Atzilos, conceal the Chabad and Midas of Atzilos that are enclosed within them, so that they are not revealed in Bria except in a very faint glimmer, like light drawn through hairs. Alternatively, speech is called concealment because only the external aspect of intellect is expressed in speech, but pneumius cannot be revealed in letters at all. Now the idea of Kriyas is revealed, and what was concealed is what was concealed. Iskasi becomes revealed is Galia. That is, the supernal speech should no longer conceal the higher lights within it, namely the intellect and midas, the 10 spheres of Atzilos, but rather they should be revealed even to the souls of Bria, just as they are revealed on Atzilos itself. Since Kriyas is joining the Bria, joining of Bria with Atzilos without any separating barrier. Therefore, the sea split into 12 pathways from the tribes. For the tribes that are in Bria, and there are 12 general divisions. Similarly, the angels of Bria are symbolized by 12 oxen beneath the sea. Though generally there are 4 camps: Michal, Gavriel, Rafal, and Uriel. Yet it says, "Mishami paret v'hayla arba rashim." As it says, yet each divides into 3, like the 12 tribes arranged in 4 banners of 3 each, just as a hand is to be joined, so to a foot. Although the tribes themselves are in Bria, their root is in Zod Atzilos. The Yubik is Goli Achsen of Zod Atzilos. As Makamachas is elsewhere to say the Maskel ben Anachim al-Malum, Bier al-Pasik Yodat. Therefore, Kriyas Yamsuf, which is the elevation and unification of Bria with Atzilos, is the elevation of the 12 tribes of Bria into their roots in Atzilos, and therefore the sea split into 12 divisions, so that each tribe would pass on its own path, from sheer delay, each according to its own measure. Base, and all this is the concept of Kriyas Yamsuf, which is the level of Dibur Ha'elyon, that the speech and letters should not conceal. However, in the future it says, the idea is that Kriyas Yamsuf was necessary in order that afterward there should be a couple of Torah, as the sages say. On Hayam Rav Yanis, Harim Ragdu, Harim Harmak refers to Matan Torah. For the main idea of mitzvahs is that through them we draw down the revelation of the infinite light below in Biyah, just as it is revealed in the essence of Atzilus. We are but in Biyah, which are separate worlds of Yesh Davar Nifra through the mitzvahs, which are the Ramach Evan and the Malka. We draw down that same higher unity of Atzilus to revealed even the Erchmash Kasab to the Er. Therefore, there first had to be a case Amtov, which is the breaking of the barrier between Atzilus and Bria, so that and through this there could afterward be Kabbalah Satira, that from Atzilus the revelation should extend into Biyah. Now, Matan Torah is in the actual performance of the mitzvahs, and Talmud Torah Kulam, and the refers to the future, which is the revelation of the inner dimension of Torah and the reasons for the mitzvahs. As Rashi explains in this is also the concept of Mashiach, about whom it says, higher than Avram, etc., until the government aid, which corresponds to the level of Adam, beyond even Adam Rishon, and even Moshe Rabbeinu, was explained in Sefer HaGilgulim, chapter 19, see there further on. And see in the writings that Ramaz and the Parsha, beginning of Eschana Parsha say that Mashiach will teach knowledge to all the people in the inner dimension of Torah. For if it were only the revealed Torah, it is difficult to understand how one person could teach countless multitudes. And furthermore, in the future, even Moshe Rabbeinu and all the great ones will arise who already know the entire Torah. Rather, the idea is that that the learning will be in Pneumis Torah, which is without limit, with endless elevations. Just as in order for Matan Torah and Yom Lesson there first had to be. So in order for the revelation of Pneumis Torah in the future, there must be a hin of Yali al Nar. This refers to the river Euphrates, not Pras, by which it says another Revi who Pras. And our sages say in Brachas who it refers to which is the level of bina, the level of machshava, which is higher than speech. Therefore, it is called a river because thought is constantly flowing and never still. Unlike speech, which is more fixed, hence speech is called mikvei hamayim, gathered water. While thought is called nahara, that flows continuously. Now, thought is also composed of letters, and these two are garments for the essence of wisdom, like speech. Though they are more internal garments, still they are also concealments relative to the essence of chacham, though not as coarse as speech. In means that there will still be a revelation of the essence of the supernal Eden, not as it is drawn into Gan Eden through the river thought letters which conceal only allow a glimmer to be perceived. This is why our sages say, and the brachas regarding Eden, ayin ladasa, and if you say that this refers to the Gan, the pasuk says, is a Gan, meaning the Gan Eden receives only from Eden, through the intermediary of the river, the letters which conceal, so the revelation is only a ray. But through Vahinif Yadon, there will be a revelation of Eden itself. This is the meaning of it, and specifically in the sense of vision, which is higher than hearing and understanding, which operate through letters. For hearing is not comparable to seeing. This level of it, seeing within the Chachma itself, can be understood from what was brought in Priyat Chaim Shar, Kriyat Shema Shalamita, that Yerizal during sleep on Shabbos heard in the heavenly academy astonishing teachings of Parshas Balak and Bilam, which he could not explain even over 80 years. This is wondrous. How could one grasp in 1 hour what would require decades to express, even though what would thought can grasp quickly, but speech takes longer to express in the Zayar on Truma, and therefore on Shabbos we say Aleph basically each letter contains multiple words because it is from Atzvin and the letters of thought. Still, that only means minutes versus hours, not 1 hour versus 80 years. Rather, the explanation is that his grasp was through the seeing the essence of wisdom, not as it is clothed in bina and letters. This is far above intellect as it is grasped and articulated, to the extent that what is seen in a short time would take decades to articulate in words. Therefore, time itself unfolds from beyond time. As it says, Elef Shana Berechikim Esmal. Similarly, Moshe said it, of Evidna, the Edis. Edis for Moshe had the level of Vayad, and he wanted to draw this into Knesset Yisrael, which is called Edit Chavetz, but he did not accomplish this then, and therefore it says, Va'at Yisrael Shema. Now it is only hearing, but in the future this level will be revealed in Knesset Yisrael through Mashiach, Va'ayin, B'zer Chelegim, L'Eschana, Pasuk Va'at, Atachiles, V'Mishkas, V'Bira, Pasuk V'Henif, HaKoyin, Oysam, Alhechem, V'Bikurim. This is the level of the revelation of the Tamei HaMitzvahs in the future, but which says, and this is what Mashiach will teach about this. It says, for even within this level there are endless elevations without limit. Gimel, and from all this we can understand what is written corresponding to the 3 hours and 40 mice. For behold, the 12 tribes are in Bria and are called Merkavta Tata, but the others are themselves the chariot. Merkavta Ilah, that is, they are the level of Chagas Da'atzilus. Now, just as the tribes, although they themselves are in Bria, nevertheless they have their root and source in Atzilus, which is above Bria, but there it is only their root, while they themselves are in Bria, as it says, but also and there is no comparison between Bria and Atzilus, therefore, in order that they themselves should unite with their source and that the revelation of Atzilus itself should be within them, this is specifically through Kriyas Samsuf, and therefore it is split into 12 paths as explained above. So too regarding the others, they themselves are in the Zayin Tachtenim Atzilus, but the root and source is in Be'evet Anaryash Vavisichem, for Zaz rooted and dependent in Atik. Meaning the root is from there, though they themselves are in the Zayin Tachtenim Atzilus. So Amish Kasu Be'er Apostle Kismen Kachayzim Be'in the Tzur Tefillin the Halacha Meshim Sinai she was Chaydish Dark should be specifically black. However, in the future, through Fen if Yadal Nar the Abbasini Mice themselves be elevated, so that there will be revealed within them that which is above Atzilus, level of Be'evet and Nar, which is designed to Tachtenim Datik, and therefore who are we call Shibun that all of Israel will receive this revelation to the Abbasini Mice. Va'aya Mashakasa Mazabi Be'er Apostle Kvalis and he days pretty much Clarice Bin Zav Kulabam Shkasa. Through this, there can then be the revelation of the interdimensional Torah, that Hamaya Torah, which is the revelation of the Mechens Dimah. For the revealed Torah is from Chabad de Zah. Therefore, for this revelation to occur, there must first be the passing on dry land through that river, and then that which is above Atzilus, namely Mechens Dimah, will be revealed even in Biyav. It can also be explained based on what the Ramaz writes in Parshas Shalach, that Paradise corresponds to the rectification of Abiyah. Seid rectifies Atzilus, while Pshat, Remesh, and Drush rectify Biyah, which are worlds of separation. And the meaning of rectifying Biyah is that they should no longer be in a state of separation, but should also be in a state of bit like Atzilus. This rectification will be revealed in the future through our actions now, when all of Biyah will be concluded within Atzilus. In Parshas over there, this is the meaning of and the Gan Sedarim, the 53 parshas that I said the Torah, and Shami Parat, meaning that this is the source of separation and its rectification. This is through Pardis Prat and Dush, which corresponds to Biyav and Atzilus, drawn from the river thought, which is Torah, by which it says, but the rectification of Atzilus itself, a bear should shine within it the revelation of the infinite light from the premise of that comes through the interdimension of Torah, called Sed Shem Lidev. And regarding this, it says, for the river is still the source of Yah, whereas the rectification of Atzilus is through that which is above the river. This is called Shem Nechalim, similar to Vanachal Adonachas came the revelation of Eden itself. For the river corresponds to thought, and Machshavadi B'Dam Maisa corresponds to Biyach. Mashkazim Machsel Shubi Yisrael ad Yesh Machshav Dibur V'Mais Ba'atzilus Shehem Biyah Sheba'atzilus. And there is yet a higher level, which refers to thought beyond intellect itself. So to hear the revelation is from that which is above the river. The phrase Bayam Ruchai can be explained based on what Chacham say. This is the spirit of Mashiach. It says V'nacha alav Ruach Hashem. Now regarding Moshe, it says it is from the waters, meaning the supernal waters from which the revealed Torah is drawn, like water that flows from high to low. But the inner Torah is the level of above the level of water, and this is the river being the level of water by Amruchai through that which is above the waters, and through this this transformation is affected, and this is drawn down through tshuva, which is also as explained on Ruach Aisi Ruach Vamshach on Zin Shemaim, the Ruach Aisi Ruach Vamshach, drawing down this higher Ruach to bring about Vahin of Yadi al Nar by Amruchai. And to further explain the connection of Yikol Shibun specifically to the revelation of the inner dimension of Torah that will be here in the future, based on what is explained, that the attribute of Yaakov Avinu to fetish that tzilas. This means that even regarding all the higher worlds, the concept of Rachamim is applicable and fitting, but the level of the Shvatim who come from Yaakov is lower than him. That is, their role is to arouse Rachamim Rabbim upon the spark of Elokus within the soul. How it is descended so tremendously for Rachmanis is according to the level of Das. From this we can understand why Kriyas Samsuf was split into 12 paths corresponding to the 12th tribe, because now there is the aspect of the tribes Rachmim on the descent of the soul into the body in Elam Osiyah, where there is a great concealment and obscurity, unlike the higher worlds. But in the future, when Olam Asiyah will be refined and so that the revelation of Asiyah will be like above, then this type of rachamim of the descent into Asiyah will no longer apply more than it does in Bria. Rather, what will apply is the rachamim of the Abbas themselves, which extend even to the higher worlds. Now, just as to the Lasata of the tribes of Rachamim, one draws down a higher source, namely the Rachamim of the Abbas themselves, like a branch tree that one bent draws down the entire tree along with it. So too, through this is drawn down a relation of the coast to Torah mitzvahs, which is the drawing down of Torah as we have it now, a drawing of So too in the future, through the relation of the Rachamim of the Abbas themselves, then all Jewish souls, this will draw down is from the level of Rachamim Gedolim of Arachamim, which is above even Chagas the Atzilus. It says about Arachamim Gedolim Akaptzacham Chaste Meitchaloi Yomish, specifically Chasti, and through this will be drawn down, which will be drawn the revelation of the inner Torah, which is level of Mechin Tzema above Chacham Atzilus. Based on this, we can also understand what Chazal said that Aitzadas Chod. Chita, he said that it was wheat. The question is, elsewhere explain the chita refers to the chaf beis eis Torah, 22 letters of Torah. So how is it called eitzadas? The explanation is discussed elsewhere. That Torah shebachsav is called eitzchaim, while Torah shebapeh is called nazer ilna the Torah, the tree of not that it is, God forbid, literally the tree of knowledge, good and evil, rather that it descends to clarify and refine the Eitzadas Tevera, which is Klipas Negach, you get it at Truva, I think. Some Beis Aleph Gimel Hey. Furthermore, even in Torah Parshas Tzav it says, B'shivri lachem Mate lechem say it's chayim, but through the breaking of the first tablets, it descended and became enclosed in physical matters. For all of Torah Parshas receives from Torah Parshas Tzav, and is its explanation. Therefore, Adam Arisha, before the sin, was above this whole level of refining it. That's Tevera, as explained in that Adam before the sin was on the level of Mashiach, even above the level of Meshav. And his dwelling was in Gan Eden, where meaning to draw from Eden Atzmai, which is the inner Torah that will be revealed in the future through Mashiach. And this is above the level of letters, as explained earlier regarding Ve'en Yadei Al Hanar. From all this, we can also understand the idea of Tenuf Ashtei Halechem over the two lambs of Shavuos. The two loaves correspond to Torah Parshas and Torah Parshas, and the lamb correspond to Rachamim, the attribute of Yaakov. Through drawing down these Rachamim, one draws down the revelation of Torah, which is called Lechem, as it says, which is Rachamim, and through this, and the waving Tenuf of the loaves and the lambs means to elevate the Torah, which is the bread, to connect and bind it with the Eidin Seif Baruch, the level of Eden Ha'elyon itself, and likewise to elevate the Rachamim of the Abbas to their source and root in Rachamim Gedolim Amshchasu b'Me'inyan Halah Zu b'Dir Maschal Tzach b'Sham b'Dir Berachad Emro b'Sham b'Dir Maschal Habsein b'Kabe, and therefore there can be Yigum Midas Hashatet and Dashes behind corresponding to the Yigum Midas HaRachamim Hey. And this is the meaning of Ve'echleim Hayi Hashemes L'Shein Yam Mitzrayim in Shio capital Yud Aleph. The Razak explains that this refers to the river of Mitzrayim, which is the Nile, and so to this explain this corresponds to what is written in Mishami Parid B'Hayil Ad Bad Roshin. From there it separates the four heads. The first is Pishin. Rashi explains this is the Nile, the river of Egypt. So too it is written in the Zohar that this is why it says because one of the four rivers that emerged from Gan Eden extends there, namely Shem Echad Pishin. And in Parsha Chaysa Daf Kuf Chav Hey Amar Aleph it says, and what is Shem Echad Pishin? The one distinguished among them all, and therefore the wisdom of Egypt was greater than that of the whole world. And we find regarding Shlema that it says this is because the root of that river is drawn from the river that emerges from Eden, which is Chachma Bina. And this is what they said, Is Mea Megadlin Chakim. There are waters that make one wise. See also Medrash Rabbi the Parsha Balak and Ramaz on Parsha Chaysa, and see also Meri is Dalad Sif Chav Hey, that the four rivers correspond to Ava Zun, and Pishan is in Abba Lashem Peshu V'Sagu, for the abundance of flow descends into Chachma, as it says, Kulam Chachma Sisikanizar Tikkun Adal Daf Tzadik Aleph and Alf. Nevertheless, since it is said about them, Shami Pada Bahilad Abashon, that they are the source of the separated worlds, as explained in the Zohar Chelik Aleph Yitzay Daf Chasam Dalef, and Shami Pada Torah de Pruda. And this is why it is called the Shein Yam Mitzrayim, from the word Meitzarim, constraints and limitations, for they are bounded beings, whether in physicality or spirituality, they are in this category of limitation and boundary. Therefore, it says in Shami Pada that they appear as something separate, a thing unto itself, because they are the source of the flow that brings about the creation of Yah, for they receive from the level of speech, and speech is in a person goes outward, becoming something seemingly separate from him, and although above it is not applicable to speak of anything, and although above it is not applicable to speak of anything outside him, that is only from his perspective, but relative to the creations, there are many contractions until they appear as separated. But in the future is written that there will be revelation of the supernal speech as it is within him, for his speech is not separate like human speech, but is utterly unified within his essence, even after it is expressed in the creation of the worlds, just as it was united with him before creation. Must cost to save Tanya. Perek Chof Aleph, and this is the meaning of V'doki Pi Hashem Diber, that the speech of Hashem will be revealed as it is in Pi Hashem itself, where it is unified with his essence, and this revelation will be seen even by Kol Basar. And through this, there will be the revelation of his unity, even in the world of Asiyach. Therefore, at that time, there will be no need for the whole river, whose flow comes in the manner of Mishami Parid. Rather, there will be a revelation and drawing down of the river that emerges from Eden itself above the level of separation, and this is parentheses, he will dry it up. And more than that, this refers to the river that emerges from Eden itself before the stage of Mishami Parid, and we call it as explained elsewhere. Additionally, one can say that the 7 streams correspond to the Zayin Tachten and the Midas and the speech within them through which the flow is drawn, and the river is Bina, which is above the Midas, corresponding to the 50th gate of Bina, which is not grasped at all. The Midas and speech receive from it only a mere radiance, as is known from the concept of Mibara Eila, but in the future it says that the very light that shines into the river itself will be drawn down, revealed within the Zayin Tachten, the Midas and speech that shine are revealed in Biyah. See also Zayr. This is the meaning of that just the water cover the sea, so to knowledge of Hashem will fill the earth, and see also beginning of Kehelas on regarding